It's getting weirder. 3i Atlas disappeared behind the sun in late October during what should have been its most active phase. And while NASA went dark during a suspiciously timed government shutdown, something else was happening. Remote viewers, people trained in perception-based intelligence gathering, were being tasked by unnamed intelligence contacts to psychically probe the object. What they saw wasn't a comet, it was a mothership, kilometers in scale, packed with millions of dormant beings, biological and mechanical elements fused in ways that don't fit our categories of life or technology. And then a CERN insider came forward, claiming scientists at the particle accelerator had opened a portal, established two-way communication with whatever occupies 3i Atlas, and received a message that every person in the room heard telepathically at the same time. Tonight, we're going deep into the conspiracies, and I need to warn you, each one gets progressively more disturbing than the last. We're starting with what remote viewers perceived when they looked in 3i Atlas, and we're ending with why December 2025 keeps appearing in prophecies, as the moment when timelines fork and humanity's future splits into radically different paths. This is the special episode where we examine what happens if the remote viewers, the whistleblowers, and the prophets are all seeing the same thing from different angles. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Remote Viewing the Mothership. What happens when you ask the human mind to perceive something millions of miles away? Something moving at impossible speeds. Something that might not even be what we think it is. What happens when you bypass telescopes and spectrometers and mathematical models, and instead rely on consciousness itself as the instrument? The answers, as it turns out, are both unsettling and remarkably consistent across independent observers who had no contact with each other. Remote viewing, for those unfamiliar, is a structured protocol for gathering information about distant or unseen targets, using extrasensory perception developed initially by the CIA and Stanford Research Institute during the Cold War. The methodology involves strict controls, blind conditions where the viewer has no conventional information about the target, and specific stages of data collection, moving from basic impressions to increasingly complex details. Dismissed by mainstream science as pseudoscience, it nevertheless produced results during military applications that were statistically significant enough to keep the programs funded for over 2 decades. When remote viewers were tasked with locating Soviet submarines, describing foreign installations, or predicting geopolitical events, they succeeded often enough that the Pentagon kept paying attention. In August 2025, a group called Adventures in Remote Viewing decided to turn this controversial tool towards 3i Atlas. They designated it Targets 774-83050 and assembled 6 experienced remote viewers, each with years of training and documented success rates in previous projects. The viewers were given only the alphanumeric designation. No pictures, no descriptions, no information about what they were supposed to perceive. Total informational blindness. The target cue was simple. What is the nature of the object named 3i Atlas, and its path through our solar system? What came back was extraordinary. Not because it proved anything definitively. Remote viewing evidence doesn't meet scientific standards of proof, but because of the convergence, 6 independent viewers, working separately, produced descriptions that overlapped in specific technical details. They all described a combination of biological and artificial elements, every single one. They used words like fuselage, hull, shell, metallic, porcelain-like, high-tech, but also slimy, gel-like, organic, Venus, a fusion of machine and life that doesn't fit our categories. Multiple viewers reported sensing a 3-dimensional shape that becomes hollow with observational windows, and internal viewing chambers, sophisticated research facilities with controlled environments. They described electrical discharge, static, buzzing, pulsing, glowing elements, sparkling surfaces, radiating energy, colors that shifted, and edges that appeared rusted or discolored, as if aged by unimaginable time in the cosmic void. Several mentioned that the object seemed to generate a spray ahead of it, pushing particles forward and backward, which aligns eerily with scientific speculation that an interstellar craft might deploy precursor particles to clear its path of dangerous debris. One viewer, John Dixon, drew images of a man-made, or rather, not naturally made object that was decorated with lime green and bright white light, emanating from seams between hexagonal pattern sections. He described how the white light turns green when exposed to oxygen or through some heat process involving metallic layers. He drew what appeared to be various metals in different layers, possibly vaporizing or sublimating, which could explain the unusual emissions telescopes have detected. Pure nickel with no iron, chemistry that shouldn't exist in nature. Patricia, another viewer in the group, perceived crowded internal spaces, high technology beyond current human capabilities, and what she described as non-human consciousness with sophisticated communication abilities and a dismissive attitude toward human intelligence. Multiple viewers independently reported this sense of being observed back, of the object or whatever occupies it, being aware of the remote viewing attempt and largely uninterested, not hostile, just indifferent, the way a human might regard an insect attempting to comprehend a spacecraft. Then there's the data from Bertie Jaworski, working under a different project with target designation 495-26877. Her sessions focused on what she called echo impressions, faint reverberating signals that suggested 3I Atlas is a relic probe from a long-extinct Martian civilization. She and her team perceived holographic echoes of glowing crystalline structures on the object's surface, technologies that aren't invading but returning home. The term they kept using was homing beacon, as if 3I Atlas is broadcasting signals designed to awaken dormant technology on Mars and possibly Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, where subsurface oceans might harbor who knows what. This fits uncomfortably with scientific theories about panspermia, the idea that life spreads through the cosmos via natural or artificial seeding. If Mars once harbored advanced civilization, a controversial hypothesis supported by some isotopic evidence we'll examine later, and if that civilization sent out probes before whatever catastrophe ended them, then an object returning now, billions of years later, might be attempting to reconnect with remnants. Not an invasion, but a homecoming. Not strangers, but distant relatives checking on the old neighborhood. But the most unsettling testimony comes from Sebastian Martin, a perception-based intelligence specialist, who claims he was contacted by intelligence agencies, he won't specify which, and asked to remotely view 3I Atlas. What he perceived was a massive mothership, kilometers in scale, packed with what he described as millions of dormant occupants not human, reptilian, draconian, terms loaded with baggage from conspiracy circles but used here descriptively for lack of better vocabulary. Beings in some form of suspended animation or low-energy state. Waiting. Martin doesn't stop there. He claims a CERN insider, someone working at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, where the Large Hadron Collider smashes particles at near light speed, revealed that scientists there activated a portal, not metaphorical, not theoretical, but actual, using the particle accelerator to create or access a dimensional gateway for two-way communication with whatever is inside or controlling 3I Atlas. The story goes that holographic figures appeared in the facility, tall, reptilian, or draconian in appearance, communicating telepathically with each scientist in the room. Every person received the same message simultaneously: we come in peace. We are here to gather the starseeds of this planet. Starseeds, in New Age terminology, refers to souls or consciousness that originated elsewhere in the cosmos. incarnated on Earth for specific purposes related to humanity's evolution or awakening, whether you take that literally, metaphorically, or dismiss it entirely. The consistency of the message across multiple recipients is notable, and the timing, if true, aligns with 3I Atlantis perihelion behind the Sun in late October, the moment of closest approach and highest energy state when such connection might require less power to maintain. The CERN angle is particularly controversial because particle physics experiments do, technically, create conditions that didn't exist in our local space-time since moments after the Big Bang. High-energy collisions probe the fabric of reality in ways we don't fully understand. Theories about creating microscopic black holes, accessing extra dimensions, or punching through quantum foam into whatever lies beneath are not entirely fringe. They're speculative extensions of accepted physics taken seriously by some theorists. Whether any of that translates to opening portals for communication with interstellar objects is another matter entirely, requiring leaps that most scientists won't make. But then most scientists also wouldn't have predicted that remote viewers would independently describe the same combination of biological and mechanical features with no prior information. The Future Forecasting Group, another collective of remote viewers, conducted sessions on 3I Atlas that uncovered what they describe as bizarre correlations with apocalyptic timelines. They report viewing the object deploying swarms of smaller probes upon reaching perihelion, probes that trigger global plasma storms and EMP-like disruptions as they enter Earth's atmosphere or magnetosphere. These visions place the critical window around December 2025, right when 3I Atlas re-emerges from behind the Sun and should be most visible from Earth. The forecasters describe a fork in the timeline, a divergence point where humanity either integrates benevolent extraterrestrial technology and experiences a leap forward, or enters a dark forest-style conflict scenario named after the science fiction concept where civilizations hide from each other because contact equals annihilation. Now, here's where it gets philosophically interesting. Remote viewing isn't supposed to work according to our current understanding of physics. Information can't travel faster than light. Consciousness can't observe distant objects without some physical interaction. Perception requires sensory input from photons or other particles, and yet under controlled conditions. Remote viewers have located submarines, described buildings they've never seen, and provided details about events before they happen with accuracy rates that exceed chance. The mechanisms remain unknown, but the phenomenon has enough documented instances that dismissing it entirely requires ignoring a body of data that, while not meeting hard science standards, is statistically compelling. So, what do we make of the 3I Atlas remote viewing data? Several possibilities present themselves. One, it's all confabulation, imagination, filling in blanks, pattern matching to existing science fiction tropes about alien motherships and ancient Martian civilizations. The viewers are picking up on cultural narratives floating through the collective unconscious and projecting them onto an ambiguous target. This explains the convergence, through shared mythology rather than shared perception. 2. The viewers are tapping into something real, but misinterpreting it through the lens of human experience and expectation. They're perceiving energy signatures, structural features, intentionality, but translating those perceptions into familiar metaphors. What registers as reptilian might be a specific frequency or geometry. What feels like dismissive intelligence might be automated systems or AI that doesn't recognize biological consciousness as significant. The homing beacon interpretation might be correct in essence while wrong in specifics. An ancient probe returning home, but not from Mars, not from any civilization we'd recognize. 3. The remote viewers are accessing future timelines or probability clouds, quantum superpositions of what might happen, and describing the most likely or most energetically charged outcome. In this model, they're not seeing 3I Atlas as it is now, but as it might become, as it might act, as the situation might unfold. The apocalyptic scenarios, the probe deployment, The plasma storms exist as potentials that may or may not manifest depending on choices and chance yet to occur. Or 4. They're right. 3I Atlas is exactly what they describe. A biological, mechanical hybrid craft containing dormant beings from an ancient civilization, possibly Martian in origin, possibly something older, using technologies that bridge dimensions or timelines, approaching Earth not by chance but with purpose, and that purpose involves contact, collection, or catalyst for a transformation we can barely conceive. The CERN portal story, as wild as it sounds, represents an attempt by elements within human governments or scientific establishments to communicate with or understand the object before it arrives fully into our sphere of influence. The problem with evaluating remote viewing data is that it exists outside the normal framework of verification. We can't run controlled experiments on a one-time event, like an interstellar object's passage through our solar system. We can't isolate variables or demand replication. We can only compare what the viewers reported to what happens. And even then, interpretation remains subjective. If 3I Atlas releases smaller objects in December, does that confirm the remote viewing? Or is it a natural process of cometary fragmentation? If there are unusual electromagnetic disturbances, plasma events, or communication attempts, do we have the sensors in place to detect them and the will to acknowledge what they might mean? What strikes me, examining this data with as much objectivity as I can muster, is the specificity. Generic claims like there's an alien ship are unfalsifiable and useless, but claims about hexagonal seam patterns emitting specific colored light under certain conditions, about layered metallic compositions that vaporize, about internal viewing chambers and dismissive attitudes. These are details that go beyond random guessing. They're testable, at least in principle, if we ever get close enough to 3I Atlas to verify them. And the consistency across viewers who didn't collaborate, who worked under blind conditions, who came from different training backgrounds and methodologies, suggest they're perceiving something, even if what that something is remains open to interpretation. One element that multiple remote viewing sessions emphasized was the sense of camouflage, that 3I Atlas is deliberately designed to appear natural, to mimic a comet or asteroid, to hide in plain sight. This isn't paranoia. It's strategy if you're an advanced civilization exploring potentially hostile territory. You don't announce yourself with flashing lights and radio broadcasts. You observe, you learn. You remain undetected until you've assessed the situation. A probe disguised as a comet could enter a solar system, pass through unmolested, gather data, and depart without ever triggering defensive responses. If any exist, the scientific observations we have so far don't contradict this. 3I Atlas has a coma. It's shedding material. It exhibits cometary features. But it also lacks a tail, has impossible chemistry, maintains trajectory despite mass loss, and follows a path suspiciously aligned with our planetary orbits. It looks enough like a comet to pass initial scrutiny, but weird enough when examined closely to raise flags. Exactly what you'd expect from camouflage, good enough to fool a cursory glance. Suspicious under detailed analysis. And then there's the blocking phenomenon several viewers reported. Some described their remote viewing being interfered with, as if something was aware of their attention and didn't want to be observed. Others reported getting through but sensing defenses or barriers, layers of shielding or misdirection. One viewer, John Dixon, specifically mentioned that those inside, if there is an inside, seemed afraid of the outcome, perhaps relating to their plan. Afraid implies anticipation, consciousness, stakes. Things don't plan if they're not intelligent. Things don't fear outcomes if they're not aware of consequences. The most mind-bending aspect of all this isn't whether the remote viewing is accurate. It's what it implies if even partially correct. We're not talking about a simple binary, comet or craft. We're talking about a spectrum of possibilities, where biology merges with technology, where ancient and advanced aren't victory, where intelligence might not resemble anything in our experience, and where the object passing through our solar system might be simultaneously a probe, a seed, a message, and a test, all of those at once, fulfilling multiple purposes across timescales that dwarf human history. The remote viewers consistently described 3I Atlas as ancient, using words like artifact, relic, aged, weathered, but also high-tech, sophisticated, and advanced, which suggests a civilization that achieved technological maturity millions or billions of years ago, then either transcended, collapsed, or dispersed, leaving behind probes that continue operating on missions defined so long ago that their creators might not even exist anymore. We're looking at the universe's equivalent of a message in a bottle, cast into the cosmic ocean eons past, finally washing up on our shore, and we're arguing about whether it's glass or plastic instead of opening it to read what's inside. The December 2025 timeline appears, repeatedly in remote viewing sessions as a critical juncture, whether that's because the viewers are genuinely perceiving a future event, because the target cue inadvertently included temporal markers, or because December simply represents when 3I Atlas becomes observable again, and thus creates a natural focal point for predictions, remains unclear. But the convergence on that time frame, independent of astronomical calculations about visibility and perihelion, is worth noting. If something is going to happen, if 3I Atlas is going to do something beyond just passing through, December is when we'll know. Until then, we're left with testimonies that read like science fiction, but come from people with documented track records in perception-based intelligence work. We're left with descriptions that match uncomfortably with some of the anomalies scientific instruments are detecting. And we're left with questions about consciousness, about what human perception can access beyond the 5 physical senses, and about whether the universe is stranger and more connected than our materialist models allow. 3I Atlas, viewed through the lens of remote perception, isn't just an object. It's a mirror reflecting back our assumptions, our fears, our hopes, and possibly our origins. Chapter 2. The Mars Connection. October 3rd, 2025. While most of Earth slept or went about their daily routine, then something extraordinary happened approximately 18 million miles away. 3I Atlas made its closest approach to Mars, passing the red planet at a distance that, in cosmic terms, is practically a whisper, closer than it would ever come to Earth, closer than any previous confirmed interstellar visitor had approached any planet in our solar system. The timing, the geometry, the precision of that encounter raises questions that don't have comfortable answers. Why Mars, of all the planets 3I Atlas could have aligned with during its trajectory through our solar system? Why did it pass so close to the one world where we have the most evidence of ancient habitability, where we've discovered dried river valleys and lake beds, where minerals requiring liquid water have been identified, where methane plumes still erupt from unknown sources? Is it coincidence? Or is Mars the reason 3I Atlas is here at all? Dr. John Brandenburg, a plasma physicist who worked on the Strategic Defense Initiative and has spent decades studying Martian geology, has proposed something that mainstream planetary science rejects, but can't entirely disprove. He suggests that Mars didn't just lose its atmosphere through slow solar wind erosion over billions of years. He suggests it was destroyed deliberately by thermonuclear explosions, not impacts from asteroids or comets, but detonations. Weapons, the kind that leave specific isotopic signatures we can still detect in Martian soil and atmosphere today. The evidence Brandenburg points to includes elevated levels of certain isotopes, particularly xenon-129, which forms during nuclear fission. The ratios don't match what you'd expect from natural radioactive decay or cosmic ray bombardment. They match disturbingly closely what you see in terrestrial nuclear test sites. He's also identified two regions on Mars, Cydonia Mensae and Galaxias Chaos, where concentrations of these isotopes are particularly high, suggesting ground zero locations for massive explosions. The energy required would dwarf anything humanity has produced, equivalent to millions of megatons, enough to strip atmosphere, sterilize surfaces, and leave a planet barren. Now, before dismissing this as fringe speculation, consider what we know. Mars did have a magnetic field that shut down relatively suddenly in geological terms, around 4 billion years ago. Without that magnetic field, solar wind could strip the atmosphere over time, but the isotopic anomalies Brandenburg identified don't align with slow erosion. They align with catastrophic events. Multiple researchers have noted that the ratio of atmospheric argon on Mars is anomalous compared to models of planetary formation. Something happened that wasn't just gradual loss, which brings us to the really uncomfortable question if Mars once hosted intelligent life, and if that civilization was advanced enough to either trigger or be targeted by nuclear destruction. What happened to them? Did they escape? Did they seed Earth with life before the end, making us their descendants? Or did they launch probes, vessels, arcs into the cosmos, hoping that someday their legacy would return to a restored world? Cliff High, a data mining analyst who develops predictive models from language patterns across the internet, has proposed exactly this scenario. He suggests that humans are Martian descendants, that we're the refugees or remnants of a civilization that either destroyed itself or was destroyed, and that 3i Atlas is coming to talk to its own civilization's glowing remnants. In this model, the object isn't alien in the sense of foreign, it's homecoming, recognition, an ancient relative returning to check on the children of survivors. The trajectory supports this to an eerie degree. 3i Atlas's perihelion. Its closest approach to the Sun occurs on October 29, 2025 at approximately 1.4 astronomical units, just inside Mars's orbit. From Earth's perspective, this happens behind the Sun, rendering the object invisible during its most active and energetic phase. But from Mars, the geometry is different. From Mars, 3i Atlas would be visible, observable, a bright object crossing the Martian sky at the moment of peak outgassing and activity. If you wanted to signal Mars, if you wanted Mars to see you, this is exactly the trajectory you'd choose. The spacecraft we have orbiting Mars, NASA's Mars Express and ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, plus NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the rovers on the surface, all had the opportunity to observe 3i Atlas during its closest approach. The images they captured, or rather the images that have been released, show a bright, compact object without the typical diffuse tail of a comet. ESA's Trace Orbiter produced an animation showing the object moving against background stars, and analysts noted that 3i Atlas exhibited more variation in brightness and apparent structure than those background stars, suggesting real changes, real complexity, something beyond a simple icy rock tumbling through space. NASA's Perseverance rover, which carries cameras capable of night sky observation, captured something during this period. A smudge, a streak, a faint light in the Martian night that amateur astronomers later processed and enhanced. The image is low resolution. The object appears elongated, almost cylindrical. And while Avi Loeb and others have explained that the elongation is likely due to motion during the exposure time, the fact remains that we're seeing something in the Martian sky at exactly the moment 3i Atlas was making its closest approach. Whether that something is the object itself, or one of the smaller probes some remote viewers predicted it might deploy, we don't know, and we might not know for a long time, because the data release has been glacial, the government shutdown, which we'll examine in more depth later. meant NASA's communication offices went dark. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's high-rise camera, the highest resolution imager we have in Martian orbit, was supposed to capture detailed images of 3I Atlas. Those images either don't exist, which raises questions about why the observation wasn't successfully executed, or they do exist and haven't been released, which raises different questions. ESA released one blurry GIF days after the fly. NASA released nothing official. The Chinese Tianwen orbiter and UAE's Hope orbiter, both of which had clear sightlines, have been silent. This coordinated lack of transparency across 4 different national space agencies feeds directly into theories about cover-ups, about what was really seen, about whether the Mars flyby revealed something that can't be publicly acknowledged without triggering panic or upending geopolitical stability. But it's also entirely consistent with how large bureaucratic scientific institutions operate. Data processing takes time. Peer review takes time. No one wants to release preliminary findings that might be wrong and damage credibility. The most mundane explanation, institutional inertia and caution, is often the correct one. Still, the timing stinks. The object makes its closest approach to Mars on October 3rd. The U.S. government shutdown begins October 1st, furloughing 15,000 NASA employees. The first and only image from ESA doesn't appear until October 7th. By then, 3I Atlas has moved on. The observation window is closed, and we're left with scraps of data from what should have been the most comprehensive imaging opportunity of an interstellar object in human history. Even if there's no conspiracy, the incompetence is staggering. But let's return to the Mars connection from another angle. If 3I Atlas is a probe from an ancient Martian civilization, what would it be looking for? What would it measure? One possibility is biosignatures, signs of life on the current Mars, methane releases, temperature variations, electromagnetic anomalies that might indicate underground habitats or active geology. Another possibility is that it's checking for specific landmarks, the coordinates of cities or installations that existed millions of years ago, now buried under dust or eroded away. Remote viewers describing 3I Atlas as broadcasting homing signals to awaken dormant technology fits here. Perhaps there are facilities underground, shielded from radiation and erosion, waiting for the right signal to reactivate. Europa, Jupiter's ice moon, enters the picture because it's another location in our solar system where subsurface oceans might harbor life. If Martian civilization achieved interstellar capability, they might have seeded or established outposts on multiple worlds. 3I Atlas's trajectory will take it past Jupiter in March 2026. Not as close as Mars, but close enough for observation. ESA's JUICE spacecraft, en route to Jupiter, is planning to observe 3I Atlas in November 2025. If there are coordinated observations between JUICE and NASA's Europa Clipper, which is also heading to the Jovian system, we might see whether 3I Atlas alters course, releases anything, or exhibits behavior suggesting it's not just passing through, but inspecting specific targets. The evidence for ancient Mars habitability keeps mounting. Recent analyses of Martian meteorites found on Earth have identified organic molecules, complex carbon compounds that on Earth are associated with life. Curiosity and Perseverance rovers have drilled into sedimentary rocks that formed in lake beds, finding chemical signatures consistent with microbial activity. None of this proves life existed, but it establishes that Mars once had the conditions liquid water, stable temperatures, chemical energy sources that life requires. If microbial life existed, the leap to intelligence and technology is another matter, requiring billions of years of evolution and no catastrophic interruptions, unless the catastrophic interruption came late, after intelligence emerged, after civilization built itself, after they looked up at the night sky and wondered what else was out there. The isotopic signatures Brandenburg identified aren't uniform across Mars, They're concentrated in specific regions, which suggests localized events rather than global processes. Natural explanations for this include volcanism, impacts that excavated subsurface materials with different isotopic ratios, or atmospheric mixing processes we don't fully understand. But those explanations require coincidences. Multiple rare events producing signatures that just happen to look like nuclear fission products. Occam's razor, which states that the simplest explanation is usually correct. Cuts both ways. Is it simpler to posit unknown natural processes or to accept that Mars might have hosted a civilization that met a violent end? And if they did meet that end, who or what ended them? Brandenburg's hypothesis includes the possibility that the destruction was external, an attack from another civilization in the solar system or from beyond. The implications are staggering. It means we're in a dark forest scenario where advanced civilizations eliminate potential competitors before they become threats. It means 3I Atlas, if connected to that ancient conflict, might be a survivor, a weapon, or a warning. It means we're surrounded by the ruins of wars we can't comprehend, playing in a cosmic graveyard, ignorant of the forces that shape the very planets we're beginning to explore. Or it means Brandenburg is wrong. The isotopic signatures have prosaic explanations. Mars never hosted intelligent life, and 3I Atlas's trajectory past the red planet is genuinely coincidental. A random alignment in an infinite cosmos where every trajectory passes close to something. But even if Brandenburg is wrong about the cause, he's not wrong about the effects. Mars did lose its atmosphere catastrophically in geological terms. Mars did have liquid water and potentially habitable conditions. Mars is silent now, red and dead, and haunting in its emptiness. And 3I Atlas chose or happened to pass closer to Mars than to any other planet in our system. That demands explanation beyond shrugs and appeals to chance. The gamma-ray evidence is particularly intriguing. NASA's Fermi Gamma-Ray Telescope and other instruments have mapped the gamma-ray sky, detecting emissions from supernovae, black holes, quasars, and other high-energy sources. Mars shows gamma-ray emissions consistent with natural radioactive decay in its crust, but some researchers have noted anomalies, hotspots that don't align perfectly with known geological features. These could be measurement errors, artifacts of observation angles, or they could be remnants of energy releases from events millions of years past. Gamma rays from nuclear detonations would have dissipated long ago, but the daughter isotopes created in those detonations persist, continuing to emit characteristic signatures. If 3I Atlas detected these signatures from interstellar space, if its sensors are sophisticated enough to map isotopic distributions from distances measured in light years, then targeting Mars makes sense. Return to the world that sent you. The world that might still have recoverable data. Dormant installations, genetic material preserved in subsurface ice or in the deep regolith, shielded from cosmic radiation. Retrieve what can be retrieved. Awaken what can be awakened, or simply bear witness. Record the state of the homeworld and carry that information to whatever destination comes next. The close approach on October 3rd might have been more than observational. If 3I Atlas is transmitting, if it deployed smaller probes as some remote viewers suggested, Mars is where they'd go, small enough to land, to enter underground caverns through lava tubes, to access sites of interest without detection by our rudimentary surface missions. We wouldn't see them on orbital images. Too small, too fast, too deliberately stealthy. We might see secondary effects, electromagnetic disturbances, unexplained dust plumes, changes in methane concentrations. But attributing those to alien probes rather than natural Martian processes requires a leap most scientists won't make. Cliff High's assertion that humans are Martian descendants ties into panspermia theories that have gained traction in recent years. If Martian microbes reached Earth via meteorites, a process we know occurs because we've found Martian rocks on Earth ejected by ancient impacts. And if those microbes seeded early Earth, then Martian and terrestrial life share a common origin. We're cousins, separated by millions of years and planetary environments, but related. If Martian life evolved intelligence first, if they achieved spaceflight, if they recognized their world was dying and sent genetic material or even small populations to Earth, then we're not just related, we're descended. The legacy of Mars lives in us, in our DNA, in the drive to explore and expand that pushes us back toward the red planet, as if answering an ancestral call. This is speculative, hovering on the edge of what evidence allows. But it's not baseless. The genetic code all terrestrial life shares, DNA and RNA structures, appear remarkably well optimized, almost as if designed rather than evolved through random mutation and selection. Panspermia, whether natural or directed, offers an explanation for how life could appear on Earth relatively quickly after the planet cooled enough to allow liquid water, bypassing the immense improbabilities of abiogenesis, life arising from non-living chemistry. If Mars seeded Earth, and if 3I Atlas is checking on that ancient intervention, then its trajectory and behavior make perfect sense. It's not visiting, it's returning. The Mars flyby represents a missed opportunity of historic proportions. We had 6 spacecraft in Martian orbit, multiple surface assets, advanced warning of the object's arrival, and we captured 1 blurry GIF and a handful of amateur-processed images. The data we needed: high-resolution spectroscopy during closest approach, radio monitoring for any transmissions, magnetometer readings to check for artificial electromagnetic signatures, infrared mapping to detect heat sources. None of it was prioritized, or if it was, hasn't been released. We're learning about 3I Atlas through absence, through what we're not being told, through gaps in the narrative that hinted either incompetence or intent. And Mars itself remained silent, offering no answers, only more questions. A world that might have harbored life, might have seen intelligence rise and fall, might be the origin point for humanity itself, and might be the destination or waypoint for an interstellar object that chose or was guided to pass within whispering distance of its red deserts. 3I Atlas continues outward, racing toward its rendezvous with Jupiter and eventual exit from our solar system. Mars recedes in its trajectory, but the connection, the possibility, the implications linger. We can't unknow what we've glimpsed, can't unthink the thoughts that ancient civilization and current visitor might be part of the same story, a story that includes us, whether we're ready for that inclusion or not. Chapter 3, The Deep State Scenario, October 1st, 2025. The United States government shuts down due to congressional deadlock over healthcare subsidies and tax policy. 15,000 NASA employees are furloughed. The agency's website stops updating. Communication offices go dark. 2 days later, 3I Atlas makes its closest approach to Mars, offering the best observation opportunity of an interstellar object in human history. The timing is so perfectly awful that it invites suspicion. Is this incompetence, the usual dysfunction of bureaucratic government? Or is this something more calculated, a convenient excuse to delay or suppress information about what was actually observed? Conspiracy circles have been ablaze since July, when 3I Atlas was first detected, with theories ranging from the plausible to the paranoid. But strip away the most extreme claims, and you're left with questions that don't have satisfying official answers. Why did the shutdown happen when it did? Why was data from Mars orbiters withheld for days, when ESA, which isn't subject to U.S. political theater, also delayed release? Why did Congresswoman Anna Pauline Luna have to personally intervene with NASA Director Patrick Duffy to ensure telescopes were even pointed at 3I Atlas during the Mars flyby? And perhaps most unsettling, why is the insurance industry, which typically models every conceivable risk from hurricanes to solar flares, remained completely silent on the cosmic threat implications of an anomalous interstellar object? The deep state scenario, as articulated by various researchers and whistleblowers, suggests that 3I Atlas is being used as a manufactured crisis, a false flag event designed to justify extraordinary measures, global lockdowns, resource nationalization, martial law implementation, consolidation of power under emergency protocols. The playbook isn't new. Governments have historically used external threats, real or perceived, to expand authority and curtail freedoms. The question isn't whether this happens, history proves it does, but whether 3I Atlas represents such an opportunity, and whether elements within government and intelligence communities are preparing to exploit it. Let's examine the shutdown itself. The official narrative is gridlock over domestic policy, Democrats and Republicans unable to compromise on spending bills. But the countdown began on October 1st, precisely when preparation for Mars observation should have been intensifying. Data processing pipelines needed to be ready, communication strategies established, scientific teams coordinating across agencies and nations. Instead, chaos. NASA employees locked out of systems, unable to access observation schedules, unable to communicate findings. Even routine operations that normally continue during shutdowns, like mission control for active spacecraft, were disrupted. Then, on August 28th, months before the shutdown, President Biden signed an executive order redesignating NASA as a national intelligence and security agency. The public justification was vague. Something about coordinating space threat assessment and protecting critical infrastructure. But the practical effect is that NASA's data and operations now fall under national security classification protocols. Information about what NASA observes, particularly regarding potential threats, can be withheld from the public indefinitely under the rubric of protecting national security. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Reclassify NASA months before an anomalous interstellar object reaches its critical observation window. Then shut down public-facing operations during that window, ensuring that whatever is learned remains controlled, filtered, spun, or buried depending on what serves the agenda. On September 30th, the day before the shutdown, over 800 flag officers, generals and admirals from all branches of the U.S. military were summoned to Quantico Marine Corps Base. The official reason: a routine briefing, but 800 flag officers don't assemble for routine anything. That's the brass, the decision-makers, the people who would need to be coordinated if a crisis response was being planned. Some researchers have connected this gathering to the recent redesignation of the Department of Defense as the Department of War, a name change that sounds archaic, but signals a shift in posture from defensive to offensive preparedness. What were they briefed on? We don't know. But the timing, one day before NASA goes dark, 2 days before 3I Atlas reaches Mars, suggests the briefing concerned the object. Perhaps intelligence assessments about its nature. Perhaps military contingencies if it proves hostile. Perhaps coordination with international partners. Or perhaps, and this is where it gets dark, coordination on how to manage perception and maintain order if 3I Atlas turns out to be exactly what some fear it is. A craft, a probe, a precursor to contact or conflict. The insurance industry's silence is particularly telling. Insurance companies employ armies of actuaries whose job is to model risk and price policies accordingly. They assess hurricanes, earthquakes, pandemics, solar flares, anything that could cause widespread damage. They've even begun factoring climate change into long-term models. Yet 3I Atlas, an object that a Harvard astrophysicist ranks as having a 40% chance of technological origin, an object whose trajectory brings it through our solar system in a way that some models suggest could allow deployment of Earth-bound probes, has generated zero public response from the insurance sector. No white papers, no risk assessments, no premium adjustments for cosmic threat exposure. This could mean they've assessed 3I Atlas as negligible risk, just a comet, nothing to worry about. Or it could mean they've been advised quietly through channels that don't leave paper trails that discussing 3I Atlas publicly isn't in anyone's interest. Create panic, trigger market instability, cause economic disruption that dwarfs any actual physical threat the object might pose. Keep it quiet, keep it controlled. Let the public believe it's just another space rock. If something happens, we'll deal with it then. But until it does, maintain the illusion of normality. This is where the false flag theories gain traction. If you wanted to stage an alien invasion, not a real one, but a perceived one, how would you do it? You'd need a plausible extraterrestrial threat, something ambiguous, enough that you could spin it either way, depending on what narrative serves your purposes. 3I Atlas, with its anomalies and unknowns, fits perfectly. You'd need control over information channels, ensuring that only approved interpretations reach the public. The NASA reclassification and shutdown accomplish that. You'd need military readiness without public alarm, a mobilization disguised as routine exercises. The Quantico briefing checks that box, and you'd need a mechanism for implementing emergency powers lockdowns, curfews, movement restrictions, framed as a necessary response to an unprecedented threat. Executive orders granting such authority already exist, drafted after 9/11 and updated periodically. Project Bluebeam, a conspiracy theory dating back to the 1990s, posits exactly this scenario, a staged alien contact event, using advanced holographic technology and psychological operations to convince the global population that extraterrestrials are either invading or offering salvation, thereby justifying the creation of a one-world government to respond. Most researchers dismiss Bluebeam as too elaborate, requiring technologies and coordination beyond any government's capability. But elements of the theory, using an external threat to drive political consolidation, are standard geopolitical tactics. You don't need holograms if you have of an actual interstellar object that's legitimately anomalous. You just need to control how that object is interpreted and presented. David Wilcock, a researcher and whistleblower who's gained a following for discussing insider information from alleged government sources, has been warning about staged alien invasion scenarios for years. His sources describe multiple contingency plans involving Dyson spheres, massive artificial structures that could be framed as hostile megastructures, and incoming objects like 3I Atlas that could be used as the MacGuffin for a psyop. According to these sources, the goal isn't to hide the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence that secret is already leaking through multiple channels, but to frame first contact in a way that benefits existing power structures. Make it a threat rather than an opportunity. A crisis requiring centralized response rather than a revelation that might decentralize authority, as people look to the cosmos rather than to governments. The timing of 3I Atlas's discovery and approach is also suspicious to some analysts. July 2025, during a period of global political instability, economic stress, declining trust in institutions, rising nationalism alongside pushes for international governance. The object arrives not during a period of unity and preparedness, but during fragmentation and distraction. If you wanted to exploit a cosmic event for political purposes, you'd want the population off balance, uncertain, looking for someone to provide answers and security. The pandemic playbook from 2020 demonstrated how quickly populations can be conditioned to accept restrictions on movement, commerce, and assembly when presented with a threat that's invisible, poorly understood, and framed as existential. 3I Atlas offers a similar dynamic. Invisible to most people without telescopes, poorly understood even by experts, and potentially existential if it's what Loeb and others suggest it might be. But let's steelman the opposite position. Maybe the shutdown was just bad timing, a consequence of political dysfunction that has nothing to do with 3I Atlas. Maybe NASA's declassification was motivated by legitimate concerns about space-based threats, from anti-satellite weapons to asteroid impact risks, and the timing relative to 3I Atlas is coincidental. Maybe the Quantico briefing covered a dozen unrelated topics, and the 800 flag officers were discussing budget allocations or strategic posture regarding terrestrial conflicts. Maybe the insurance industry is silent because their models show negligible risk, or because they're simply not tracking astronomical events that don't have historical precedent for causing insured losses. These explanations are plausible. Government incompetence is far more common than government conspiracy. Agencies fail to coordinate. Communication breaks down. Important events slip through the cracks in bureaucracy. The shutdown affecting NASA's ability to respond to 3I Atlas might be exactly what it looks like, a series of unfortunate but unconnected decisions. And yet, the pattern persists. When you examine the sequence of events, the August executive order, the September military briefing, the October shutdown, the delayed data release, the coordinated silence across multiple national space agencies, the lack of insurance sector response, you see either an improbable series of coincidences or a coordinated effort to control information and prepare for contingencies the public isn't being told about. Havelock, when asked whether he believes NASA and other agencies know more than they're sharing, responded clearly, no. He attributes the delays to terrestrial stupidity rather than extraterrestrial intelligence. In his view, the shutdown and subsequent information vacuum represents human dysfunction, not human conspiracy. But Loeb is an optimist in some ways, believing that scientific institutions, however flawed, ultimately serve the truth. Others are less charitable, pointing to historical examples of governments withholding information about unidentified aerial phenomena, about nuclear close calls, about intelligence assessments that contradict public statements. The question becomes, if they are hiding something, what would it be? One possibility is that the Mars flyby images showed something unambiguous, structures on 3I Atlas that are clearly artificial, smaller probes being released, course corrections that can't be explained by outgassing or gravity, releasing that information without preparation, without a framework for public understanding, without international coordination on response could cause panic. Markets could crash as people question whether economic planning means anything in the face of potential alien contact. Religious institutions could fracture as doctrines confront realities they didn't anticipate. Social order could erode as people decide that societal rules don't matter if are on the brink of cosmic intervention, or the images showed nothing unusual. Confirming 3I Atlas is just a weird comet, and the withholding of data is about bureaucratic processes running slowly, not about content too sensitive to release. In this scenario, the conspiracy theorists are reading patterns into noise, seeing coordination where there's only chaos, attributing to malice what's adequately explained by mediocrity. The truth, as always, likely sits somewhere between these poles. Some information is being withheld, but not because it's proof of aliens. Rather, because releasing preliminary data that might be misinterpreted is seen as more risky than delaying until conclusions are certain. What's undeniable is that the public is hungry for information. And in the absence of official transparency, alternative narratives flourish. Congresswoman Luna's direct intervention highlights this. She represents a district in Florida, home to Kennedy Space Center, with constituents who care deeply about space exploration. When NASA went silent during the shutdown, she picked up the phone, called the director, and demanded that resources be allocated to observe 3I Atlas. Her action resulted in telescopes being repositioned, and data being captured that otherwise might not have been. This is civilian oversight working. An elected representative enduring that agency serve public interest, even when institutional inertia or opaque priorities threaten to derail important work. But Luna is one voice, and her influence limited. If elements within NASA, the military, or intelligence community wanted to suppress findings about 3I Atlas, a single congresswoman couldn't stop them. Classification protocols, national security restrictions, and interagency agreements that supersede congressional oversight all provide mechanisms for keeping secrets. The public would be told what's safe to know or what's convenient to reveal, and the rest would remain behind closed doors until some future leak or deathbed confession brings it into light decades later. Elon Musk's silence on 3I Atlas is also curious. He owns SpaceX, operates thousands of Starlink satellites, has aspirations for Mars colonization, and regularly comments on astronomical events and space policy. Yet, he said nothing publicly about 3I Atlas, despite it being arguably the most significant astronomical event of the decade. This could be because he's assessed it as unimportant, just a comet not worth his attention. Or it could be because he's been advised that engaging with the topic isn't helpful, that it might spread concern or give oxygen to conspiracy theories, or more intriguingly, because he knows more than he's saying, having access through SpaceX contracts and security clearances to information that's not public, and he's concluded that silence serves his interests better than commentary. The false flag scenario. The idea that 3I Atlas could be used to justify a pre-planned agenda doesn't require the object itself to be fake. It just requires that the response to the object be manipulated, that genuine certainty and legitimate concern be weaponized for political purposes. If 3I Atlas does nothing, just passes through and exits, the measures put in place, the surveillance, the emergency powers, the international coordination structures, they don't go away. They become normalized, part of the architecture of control that remains long after the crisis that justified them has passed. This is the game theory of crisis exploitation: create or allow conditions where a crisis seems imminent. Implement measures to address that crisis, and then maintain those measures indefinitely, because the possibility of future crisis always exists. It's how temporary wartime measures become permanent features of governance, how emergency powers become standard operating procedure. 3I Atlas, whether it's a comet or a craft, provides cover for adjustments to global governance structures, for surveillance expansion, for military mobilization that might face resistance if proposed without an external justification. Or we have to keep this possibility in view. Maybe the people preparing are doing exactly what they should be doing. Maybe assessing an anomalous interstellar object as a potential threat, classifying data until it's certain, mobilizing military leadership to discuss contingencies, preparing emergency response frameworks in case worst-case scenarios unfold. Is prudent crisis management. Maybe we should be grateful that someone is taking 3I Atlas seriously, even if that seriousness manifests as secrecy and control rather than transparency and public engagement. The challenge is that from the outside, competent preparation and malicious exploitation look identical until outcomes reveal intent, and by then it's often too late to resist if the intent was malicious. What happens next will clarify much when 3I Atlas emerges from behind the sun in December, when it's observable again. When additional data comes in, we'll see whether the agencies and institutions withholding information now release it, whether explanations are offered, whether the public is brought into the loop or kept in the dark, if transparency returns, if we get detailed imagery and honest assessments of what 3I Atlas is and what it means. Then the delay can be attributed to normal processes, however frustrating. If the silence continues, if data remains classified, if only sanitized summaries are released while critical details stay hidden, Then the questions about deep state agendas and false flag preparations become harder to dismiss. December will tell us not just about 3I Atlas, but about the kind of world we're living in. One where governments serve their people's right to know, or one where governments serve interests that require people remain ignorant, compliant, and controlled. Chapter 4. The Secret Space Programs. What if 3I Atlas isn't arriving from interstellar space, but returning from a mission that began decades or even centuries ago? What if the object isn't foreign but familiar, not alien but human, or at least connected to human history in ways that official narratives don't acknowledge? This possibility sounds like science fiction until you examine the persistent testimonies of whistleblowers, the curious gaps in space program documentation, and the technological anomalies that suggest our capabilities in space might extend far beyond the public frontier. Solar Warden. The name appears in declassified documents, in testimony from military and intelligence personnel, and in the claims of hackers who allegedly accessed classified networks. The story goes that in the 1980s, following decades of covert collaboration with extraterrestrial civilizations, or recovered technology from crash retrieval programs, the United States and allied nations developed a secret space fleet. Not satellites, not space shuttles, but actual naval-equivalent vessels capable of operating beyond Earth orbit, conducting long-duration missions to the outer solar system, and potentially to nearby star systems. The testimonies are numerous, enough that dismissing all of them requires assuming a coordinated hoax or mass delusion. Gary McKinnon, the British hacker who breached U.S. military networks in the early 2000s, claims he saw spreadsheets listing non-terrestrial officers, fleet-to-fleet transfers, and ship names that didn't correspond to any known Navy or Air Force vessels. He was nearly extradited to face charges that could have resulted in decades in prison, suggesting the breaches touched something genuinely sensitive. His descriptions of what he found clean energy technologies, anti-gravity propulsion systems, and evidence of structures on the Moon and Mars align with other whistleblower accounts. Despite having no contact with those sources, Corey Goode, another figure in this space, claims he served in a secret space program for 20 years, participating in missions that involved travel to Mars, interactions with multiple extraterrestrial species and operations across the solar system. His testimony includes details about alliances between human factions and Nordic or Pleiadian civilizations, beings described as humanoid, tall, fair-featured, technologically advanced, but philosophically aligned with principles of non-interference and gradual awakening of humanity's consciousness. Accounts are impossible to verify, tainted by associations with individuals promoting dubious spiritual doctrines. But elements of his testimony match other sources, suggesting either a shared mythology or shared experiences within a hidden program. The theory connecting 3I Atlas to Solar Warden or similar programs posits that the object was launched decades ago, possibly in the 1960s, during the height of the Cold War space race secrecy on a mission to explore interstellar space, scout for habitable worlds, or establish contact with civilizations detected through radio astronomy, using propulsion technologies not publicly acknowledged. Fusion drives, or more exotic systems that don't require propellant in the conventional sense. The craft achieved velocities that make it appear to be arriving from an interstellar origin when, in fact, it's been looping through the outer solar system or nearby stellar neighborhood and is now returning. Why return now? Perhaps the mission parameters included a scheduled homecoming. Perhaps the craft detected something requiring Earth be alerted a threat, an opportunity, or information gathered during its journey that mission controllers need to integrate into strategic planning. Perhaps something went wrong and the craft is limping home, damaged or depleted, unable to complete its mission and seeking recovery. Or perhaps this is all part of a controlled disclosure strategy, where the craft's return allows the secret space program's existence to be revealed gradually, framed as a discovery rather than an admission. avoiding the political fallout of acknowledging decades of lies and hidden expenditures. The precision of 3I Atlas's trajectory supports this hypothesis. Its path through the inner solar system, aligning closely with planetary orbits, passing near Mars and Jupiter, could reflect deliberate navigation rather than a random cosmic trajectory. Its metallic emissions, the pyroclastic without iron, might not be natural outgassing but exhaust from propulsion systems. Fusion or fission reactions generating specific isotopic signatures that appear anomalous when analyzed through the lens of cometary science. Its lack of a traditional tail, the forward glow that appears in Hubble images, could be a thrust plume rather than solar radiation heating ice. The Nordic or Pleiadian connection adds another layer. Multiple contactee and abductee testimonies over decades, describing encounters with beings fitting this description, claiming to be from star systems in the Pleiades cluster, roughly 400 to 450 light-years from Earth. They typically present themselves as benevolent, concerned about humanity's development, particularly on nuclear weapons and environmental destruction, offering warnings and guidance if such a civilization exists and has been monitoring Earth. If collaborating covertly with human governments or military factions, then 3I Atlas could be a joint operation. A probe designed and crewed by both human and Nordic personnel, sent out to gather data and now returning to share findings. This scenario has the advantage of explaining why governments are treating 3I Atlas with a mixture of secrecy and concern. If it's one of ours, or partially ours, then acknowledging its true nature means admitting to programs that were never authorized by Congress, funded through black budgets and off-book operations, involving technologies that would revolutionize energy and transportation if released, but would also destabilize economies built on fossil fuels and conventional aerospace. The economic, political, and social disruptions would be immense, and the people currently benefiting from existing power structures have strong incentives to prevent or at least control that disruption. Red Sky is another program name that appears in a similar context, sometimes described as an earlier iteration or a parallel operation to Solar Warden. The details are murky, but the general claim is that starting in the 1950s, after the Roswell incident and other alleged crash retrievals, the United States began reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology, achieving breakthroughs in propulsion, material science, and energy generation by the 1970s. These technologies were sufficiently mature to enable crewed missions beyond the Moon. The Apollo program, in this narrative, was a limited hangout, showing the public a primitive version of our space capabilities, while the real exploration happened in secret using craft that didn't need chemical rockets. The Apollo 20 mission, allegedly conducted in 1976 but never officially acknowledged, is said to have landed on the Moon's far side to investigate a crashed spacecraft visible in orbital photographs. The crew reportedly found a large, elongated object partially buried with features suggesting artificial construction. Some of the descriptions cigar-shaped, segmented hull, metallic composition, match descriptions of 3I Atlas, leading to speculation that what crashed on the Moon and what's passing through our solar system now are the same type of craft, possibly from the same civilization's national program. The alleged Apollo 20 footage, leaked online and disputed as either authentic or a sophisticated hoax, shows interior exploration of this crashed vessel with glimpses of technology, and even a preserved being in what appears to be suspended animation. If this is true, if we recovered a craft on the Moon, reverse engineered it, sent out our own version, and that version is now returning, then 3I Atlas represents the culmination of a century-long arc of secret aerospace development. It also means that contact with extraterrestrial intelligence didn't begin with 3I Atlantis' arrival in 2025, but potentially began decades ago with crashes, retrievals, negotiations, and collaborations that the public has never been informed about. The UFO disclosure movement. the Pentagon's acknowledgement of unidentified aerial phenomena, the establishment of task forces, and formal investigations could all be steps toward preparing the public for revelations about programs like Solar Warden and objects like 3i Atlas. John Vivanco, a metaphysical researcher and show host, has offered a more complex narrative involving competing extraterrestrial factions and secret space programs caught in the middle. According to his sources, which include alleged insider writers and contactees, 3i Atlas is controlled by reptilian extraterrestrial beings, often described in ancient mythology and modern alien encounter literature as hostile, or at least self-interested, operating from a survival and dominance paradigm. These beings are supposedly engaged in a conflict with Nordic or Pleiadian factions and others over control of Earth and its population, viewing humans as a resource to be managed rather than a species to be uplifted. In this model, Solar Warden and similar programs exist partly to defend Earth's interests in this broader conflict, operating as a kind of cosmic coast guard, monitoring solar system traffic, intercepting unauthorized intrusions, and negotiating with various extraterrestrial powers to maintain a degree of human autonomy. 3i Atlas arriving now represents either an escalation by reptilian forces, a reconnaissance mission, or testing Earth's defenses, or an attempt to re-establish contact with assets or agents they have on or beneath Earth's surface. The October Mars flyby might have been to check on Martian installations or underground facilities that date back to when Mars was habitable, ensuring those assets remain operational or retrievable. This narrative is impossible to prove or disprove with available evidence, sitting squarely in the realm of testimony without verification. But there's an explanation for why multiple governments seem simultaneously concerned and unprepared regarding 3i Atlas. If it's part of a known conflict, an expected development in an ongoing situation, then the response reflects strategic positioning rather than discovery. If it's unknown, genuinely unexpected, despite decades of alleged secret space operations, then it suggests either those programs don't exist or they've been blindsided by something outside their intelligence networks. Another perspective comes from researchers examining the Galactic Federation concept. The idea that advanced civilizations form cooperative networks for mutual benefit and cosmic governance. In this model, 3i Atlas isn't a single civilization's probe but a way station, a mobile platform that multiple civilizations use for docking, repairs, data exchange, and coordination. Remote viewers describing reptilian, avian, and crystalline entities, all present on the object, fits this multicultural space station concept. The object arrives at our solar system, not to interact with Earth specifically, but because we're a convenient stopping point on routes connecting more significant destinations, the cosmic equivalent of a rest stop on an interstellar highway. If human secret space programs have achieved interstellar capability, even if only to nearby stars or the Oort cloud, they would likely encounter these Federation way station craft. Initial contact might have been decades ago, leading to negotiations about Earth status, our admission or exclusion from Federation politics, the rules governing our development, and their intervention. 3i Atlantis' current passage could represent a scheduled inspection, a delegation checking on how Earth is progressing, whether we've met benchmarks for technological and social development that would qualify us for broader cosmic community participation. The exhaust signature analysis is worth examining more closely. 3i Atlas is losing mass. We know this from Hubble observation, showing material leaving the object toward the Sun, but the trajectory isn't changing, which requires the mass loss to be either symmetric, balanced equally in all directions, so the net force is zero, or the object is so massive that the thrust from outgassing is negligible. Avi Loeb calculated the mass must exceed 33 billion tons to make the math work with natural outgassing. But if the emissions aren't outgassing but controlled propulsion, fusion drives, or ion engines, or something more exotic, then the thrust could be directional, providing all course corrections that maintain the precise trajectory we're observing. This would require active systems, intelligence control. Exactly what you'd expect from a crewed or AI-managed spacecraft. The chemical composition adds weight here. Pure nickel emission without iron is chemically bizarre for a comet, where you'd expect a mix reflecting stellar nucleosynthesis ratios. But for a fusion reactor using specific isotopes, the byproducts would reflect the fuel and reaction pathway, potentially producing nickel-dominant emission. Some advanced fusion concepts use nickel isotopes, and while we haven't mastered those reactions on Earth, a civilization with centuries or millennia more development certainly could. The absence of iron might not be an anomaly requiring explanation, but a signature identifying the propulsion system type, a fingerprint that says this is technology, this is controlled. The timeline for a solar Warden mission launched in the 1960s or 70s, and returning now requires velocities of around 1 to 5% light speed, depending on distance traveled. That's beyond anything publicly acknowledged, but within theoretical reach of fusion pulse propulsion, antimatter catalyzed fusion, or other concepts, steps that appear in classified research. The journey time would be decades, requiring either suspended animation for crew, multi-generational ship design, or AI control with minimal or no organic crew. The fact that 3I Atlas shows no obvious signs of damage, no tumbling or uncontrolled venting, suggests either it's remarkably resilient or it's been actively maintained during its journey, implying functional systems. If this is one of ours coming home, then someone on Earth knows. Mission Control, somewhere buried in a mountain or desert facility, has been tracking it, receiving telemetry, possibly even communicating with whatever or whoever is aboard. The shutdown, the secrecy, the delayed data release, they're not about hiding an unknown, but about controlling revelation of a known, deciding how and when to admit that we've been really in space for decades, that the technologies exist to solve energy crises, to enable interstellar exploration, to transform civilization, but have been kept secret for reasons of power, profit, and control. The emotional weight of this possibility is significant. If true, it means every astronaut who risked their life on chemical rockets, every scientist told that faster-than-light travel is impossible, every visionary ridiculed for suggesting we could do more than we claim. They were right, and the suppression has been deliberate. It means the technologies to prevent climate catastrophe, to lift billions from energy poverty, to explore the cosmos. They exist, but are hoarded by a cabal that profits from scarcity and limits. It means the wonder and inspiration that space exploration generates has been artificially constrained, the frontier kept just beyond reach to maintain dependence on Earth-based power structures. But it also might mean that revelation is coming. 3I Atlas, whether it's a secret space program craft or not, is forcing conversations about what's possible, what's hidden, what we're capable of. Its anomalies can't be fully explained by conventional comet science, creating cognitive dissonance that opens minds to other alternatives. If disclosure is a process, not an event, then 3I Atlas serves as a catalyst, a data point too significant to ignore, pushing the needle from speculation toward confirmation. And if that confirmation comes, if we learn that objects like this are ours, have been ours, the question becomes not what it is, but what we do with that knowledge. The Nordic alliance aspect, if real, suggests that humanity isn't alone in resisting negative extraterrestrial influence, the reptilian versus Nordic conflict narrative, stripped of its loaded terminology, describes a common theme in exopolitics research: factions with different philosophies about intervention, control versus freedom, Domination versus cooperation. Nordics supposedly advocate for humanity's sovereignty and gradual awakening, sharing technology and guidance but not imposing control. Reptilians, or whatever they actually are, reportedly operate from hierarchical power structures where might makes right and the strong dominate the weak. These aren't moral judgments but strategic orientations, and secret space programs aligning with Nordic factions would reflect a choice about what kind of cosmos we want to inhabit and what kind of civilization we want to become. 3i Atlas passing through our solar system might be a test of that choice. Are we aware enough to recognize what we're looking at? Are we unified enough to respond coherently? Are we mature enough to handle the truth, whatever it is? Or are we still fragmenting into tribal factions, more concerned with who controls the narrative than with what the narrative reveals? The secret space programs, if they exist, operate in a paradigm where these questions have been answered through action. They've made contact. They've negotiated. They've chosen sides. The rest of humanity, kept ignorant, hasn't had that opportunity. 3i Atlas offers it now a chance to look up, to ask the hard questions, to demand transparency, and to accept that the universe we thought we knew is smaller, younger, and less informed than the universe that actually exists. The interstellar way station concept deserves deeper consideration because it resolves several paradoxes. If 3i Atlas is massive, kilometers in scale, housing multiple species, serving as a mobile base for operations across stellar distances, then its trajectory through our solar system isn't about Earth at all. We're incidental background, a primitive civilization on a backwater world that happens to be near a useful refueling or data exchange point. The remote viewers, perceiving crowded interiors, multiple entities, and sophisticated facilities, are seeing a living space station, a cosmic embassy where different civilizations collaborate on projects that span galaxies and timescales we can barely conceive. In this scenario, Solar Warden, or equivalent human programs, have already made contact with these way station craft, established protocols for approach and communication, perhaps even sent personnel aboard for exchanges. The secrecy surrounds not the existence of 3i Atlas, but humanity's involvement with it. The fact that we've been participating in a broader cosmic community while the public has been told we're alone, that interstellar travel is centuries away, that contact remains hypothetical. Revealing this would require explaining why the secrecy, where the technologies came from, what agreements have been made, and who authorized decisions that affect all of humanity, but were made by unelected elements within military and intelligence structures. The return of 3i Atlas then isn't an arrival, but a scheduled visit, a checkpoint in an ongoing relation. The reason for heightened alert might be that this visit includes something new, a delegation requesting something, an assessment being conducted, a decision point where humanity's trajectory will be influenced by outcomes of negotiations the public doesn't know are happening. The government shutdown and information. Control ensure that whatever transpires during 3i Atlas's passage remains manageable, interpretable, spun to fit narratives that don't threaten existing structures, even as they acknowledge new realities. This is perhaps the most unsettling version of the secret space program hypothesis. Not that we're encountering aliens for the first time, but that we've been encountering them all along, and the gatekeepers of that knowledge have decided that we, the collective humanity, can't be trusted with the truth, that our reactions would be too unpredictable, our demands for change too disruptive, our recognition of being lied to too destabilizing for institutions that depend on our compliance and belief in their legitimacy. 3i Atlas becomes a mirror held up not to show us aliens, but to show us ourselves, a species capable of incredible ingenuity and exploration, but also capable of profound deception and control. A species reaching for the stars, while chains of secrecy hold most of us to the ground. Chapter 5. Prophetic Visions and Timelines, December 2025. The month keeps appearing in visions, in remote viewing sessions, in channeled messages, in prophetic warnings from sources ranging from intelligence analysts to spiritual mediums, not as a vague future date, but as a specific convergence point, a moment when something shifts, when timelines fork, when the probability waves that quantum mechanics describes collapse into definite outcomes. What makes December so significant? 3i Atlas reemerges from behind the sun, becoming visible again to Earth-based observers, entering the window where any activity, any deployment, any signal would be detectable. But the prophetic focus suggests more than astronomical positioning. It suggests an event, a choice, a revelation that changes everything. The Future Forecasting Group, which employs trained remote viewers to explore probable futures rather than present or past targets, conducted extensive sessions on 3i Atlas and consistently encountered apocalyptic imagery, not metaphorical destruction, but specific scenarios involving electromagnetic disruption, plasma events, spheric phenomena that don't fit natural weather patterns. Their viewers describe watching 3i Atlantis release smaller objects at perihelion, dozens or hundreds of probe-sized craft that accelerate toward inner planets using the sun's gravity in reverse orbit maneuvers, slingshotting inward at velocities conventional propulsion can't achieve. These smaller probes, according to the visions, don't impact Earth but enter the magnetosphere, the protective bubble of Earth's magnetic field. Once there, they begin interacting with the plasma environment, the charged particles trapped in radiation belts, triggering cascading reactions that manifest as aurora-like displays across the entire planet, visible even at equatorial real latitudes, beautiful at first, mesmerizing, but then the effects intensify. Electronics fail not from direct EMP like a nuclear detonation, but from induced currents in long conductors, power grids, communication networks, anything that spans distances. The disruption is selective, targeting infrastructure while leaving biological systems unaffected, suggesting precision rather than indiscriminate assault. The forecasters describe a fork point following this event. In one timeline branch, humanity interprets the disruption as an attack and responds with fear, activating military protocols, attempting to shoot down or disable the probes, escalating toward conflict with an adversary we don't understand and can't effectively resist. This path leads to further chaos, societal breakdown as systems remain offline, resource scarcity triggering conflicts, a thin veneer of civilization cracking under stress it wasn't designed to handle. Dark forest scenario realized. Contact equals catastrophe because we treated it as war from the moment it began. In the other timeline branch, the disruption is recognized as a communication attempt or gift, rather than an attack. The selective nature of the electromagnetic interference, the fact that life support systems and medical equipment can be shielded while corrupt financial networks and surveillance apparatus cannot, suggests intentional discrimination. Someone or something is resetting the board, clearing away technological dependence that's become top toxic, forcing a return to more local, resilient, human-scale organization. In this branch, the initial panic gives way to adaptation. Community is pulling together, old skills reviving, and when communication is restored, it's on different terms, less centralized, less controllable, more aligned with human well-being than corporate profit. Which path manifests depends on choices made in the immediate aftermath, particularly by those with power to shape narrative and direct response. If military leaders frame it as an attack, populations will follow that framing. If scientists and diplomats frame it as contact, different options open. The forecasting suggests December is when this choice crystallizes, when 3i Atlas does whatever it's going to do, and our reaction determines which future we inhabit. This is heavy stuff, probability theory meeting prophecy, quantum superposition applied to social and political outcomes. But it gets weirder. Some remote viewers describe not just seeing the fork, but existing in both timelines simultaneously, experiencing the dissonance of contradictory futures overlapping. They report temporal bleed, where events from December echo backward into previous months, creating precognitive awareness and sensitive, who perceive the echo before the event that causes it occurs. This would explain why so many independent sources are converging on December without a clear, rational basis. They're perceiving effect before cause, the timeline fault casting a shadow backward through time that manifests as prophetic certainty. Charisma Magazine, a publication serving Pentecostal and charismatic Christian communities, featured articles connecting 3i Atlas to end times prophecy, the biblical scenarios describing Earth's final days before divine judgment and renewal. The parallels are striking enough that even skeptics of religious interpretation acknowledge the pattern matching. Revelation describes signs in the heavens, stars falling to Earth, cosmic disturbance that accompany the return of Christ or the final conflict between good and evil. 3i Atlas appearing in the sky, visible to all nations, exhibiting behaviors that can't be explained by natural law, fits the archetype. The end times interpretation doesn't necessarily mean literal apocalypse. In theological terms, apocalypse means revelation, unveiling the hidden made manifest. 3i Atlas as apocalypse could mean it reveals truths that end one age and begin another, that the unveiling of extraterrestrial intelligence or advanced human space programs or ancient Martian connections represent such paradigm disruption that the world after can't resemble the world before. Prophecy becomes self-fulfilling, not through supernatural intervention, but through the psychological and social transformations that occur when core beliefs about our place in the universe are overturned. Some prophetic voices within Christian communities describe 3i Atlas as a divine intervention vessel, technology so advanced it appears miraculous, operated by beings that fulfill angelic functions, even if their origin is extraterrestrial rather than supernatural. The message received through CERN portal, according to Sebastian Martin's testimony, "We come in peace to gather the star seeds," aligns with biblical harvest imagery, where wheat is separated from chaff, where the faithful are gathered while the corrupt system collapses. Whether you interpret this literally as a rapture-type event or metaphorically as consciousness evolution, separating those ready for awakening from those trapped in old paradigms. The structure matches prophetic frameworks thousands of years old. The light-based orbs that remote viewers and prophetic sources describe 3i Atlas releasing serve multiple purposes in these visions. On a practical level, they're described as neutralizing black-budget weapons, satellites equipped with directed energy systems, nuclear launch capabilities, and technologies that could threaten the object or escalate conflict beyond recovery. But on a metaphysical level, they're described as consciousness expansion tools, emitting frequencies that activate dormant DNA, stimulate pineal gland function, and dissolve barriers between physical and non-physical perception. This is where hard science and esoteric spirituality blur, where claims become untestable because they involve subjective internal experiences that can't be measured by external instruments. The starseed concept requires unpacking in New Age and contactee literature. Starseeds are souls or consciousness that incarnated on Earth from other planetary systems, choosing to experience human life to assist with Earth's evolution or to learn lessons available through physical density. They're described as feeling out of place, longing for home they can't quite remember, drawn to stars and space with inexplicable nostalgia. If 3i Atlas is here to gather star seeds, it implies a recognition system, an ability to identify which consciousnesses are of stellar origin and which are terrestrially evolved, and an intention to either extract them, activate them, or simply acknowledge them. This sounds absurd through a materialist lens, where consciousness is an epiphenomenon of brain chemistry and nothing exists beyond the physical body, but through an idealist lens, where consciousness is fundamental and physical reality emerges from it. The concepts make different sense. If consciousness can exist independent of a biological substrate, then transfer between bodies, planets, and even dimensional planes becomes theoretically possible. Starseeds would be consciousness that existed elsewhere, experienced life in different forms, and incarnated here for specific purposes. 3i Atlas recognizing them wouldn't require scanning DNA, but reading energetic signatures, patterns of awareness that differentiate experiential histories. Whether any of this is real or elaborate mythology doesn't change its function. These narratives give people a framework for understanding anomalous experiences, for feeling connected to the cosmos rather than isolated on Earth, for believing their lives have meaning beyond survival and reproduction. The prophecies about December, about consciousness expansion, about starseeds being gathered, they provide hope that current suffering isn't permanent, that change is coming, that the corrupt systems oppressing humanity are temporary and will be swept away by forces beyond their control. This is powerful psychologically, even if untrue empirically, because belief shapes behavior and behavior shapes outcomes. The Galactic Federation station messages, channeled through various sources but notably the GFL station YouTube channel, emphasize positive interpretation of 3i Atlas. According to these transmissions, the object is broadcasting lyra and genetic codes, activational sequences that supercharge individuals carrying dormant extraterrestrial DNA or consciousness templates. Lyrans in this cosmology are among the oldest humanoid civilizations in our galaxy, ancestors to many current stellar cultures, including Pleiadians and possibly ancient Martians. If learning codes are being broadcast, it means reconnection with heritage, restoration of abilities and awareness that were suppressed or forgotten during Earth's quarantine period, where we developed in isolation from the broader galactic community. The channelers describe December as when these transmissions peak, when Earth's position relative to 3i Atlas create optimal conditions for signal reception, and when individuals sufficiently open to the frequencies experience spontaneous upgrades in consciousness, healing of physical and psychological trauma, activation of psychic abilities, and reconnection with soul purpose. This is testable, at least individually. If thousands or millions of people report sudden transformations in December, if healing occurs at rates beyond statistical norms, if abilities manifest that weren't present before. But it's also unfalsifiable at a collective level because subjective experiences can't be disproven, only believed or dismissed. George Kavasilas, another researcher in this space, frames 3i Atlas within a narrative of Earth liberation from negative extraterrestrial control structures. He describes the current global elites as puppets or hybrids serving off world masters who've maintained Earth as a prison planet, farmer or experimental zone for millennia. The arrival of 3i Atlas represents intervention by benevolent factions, the white hats in the cosmic conflict, here to dismantle control grids and free humanity to self-determine our path. The plasma events and electromagnetic disruptions would target the technological infrastructure of control, satellites surveilling U.S. financial networks, binding us to debt slavery, and communication systems feeding propaganda and division. This narrative empowers people to see themselves as part of liberation, rather than victims of circumstances beyond their control. It also provides clear enemies: the cabal, the deep state, negative ETs, and clear allies: the Galactic Federation, Nordic races, and 3i Atlas itself. The moral clarity is appealing after decades of murky geopolitics where everyone claims to be good and everyone accuses everyone else of evil. But moral clarity often oversimplifies. creating binaries where reality operates in spectrums. And the danger in prophetic narratives is they can justify inaction, waiting for external saviors rather than building solutions ourselves. The timeline fracturing concept deserves serious philosophical attention, even if its mechanics remain speculative. Quantum mechanics describes superposition, where particles exist in multiple states simultaneously, until observation collapses them into a single outcome, applied to the macroscopic world. This suggests futures exist as probability clouds, multiple versions playing out until decisions collapse probability into actuality. Remote viewers accessing these probability clouds would perceive multiple futures as equally real, because in a quantum sense they are, at least until the waveform collapses. If this is correct, then prophetic accuracy doesn't require seeing predetermined future, but perceiving high-probability trajectories and communicating them backward through time to influence choices that determine which trajectory manifests. Prophecy becomes a self-negating paradox, accurate because it warns of what happens if nothing changes, but inaccurate if the warning prompts changes that avert the foreseen outcome. December as a convergence point makes sense in this framework, because it's when 3i Atlas is most observable, most active, when the object itself forces reality to choose which version of events will solidify into history. The 2027 date that Future Forecasting Group and others mention as a secondary convergence extends this further. If December 2025 is the first decision point, opening moves in a contact scenario, then 2027 represents consequences crystallizing the world that results from December choices becoming undeniable. Viewers describe 2027 as radically different, depending on which timeline branch was taken, either a post-GST cooperative civilization or Mad Max resource wars. The gap between December 2025 and late 2027 allows time for initial decisions to cascade through systems, for dominoes to fall, for feedback loops to amplify small differences into massive divergences. What do we do with all this prophetic material? Dismiss it as wishful thinking, imagination, filling unknowns with archetypes and hopes possible. But that doesn't explain the convergence across sources, with no apparent communication, the specificity of the December timeline, the correlation with astronomical events that weren't known when some prophecies were recorded. Take it literally as a prediction of physical events. Dangerous, because literal interpretation encourages passivity and waiting for external intervention rather than taking responsibility for shaping outcomes. Perhaps the middle path is recognizing these prophecies as mapping a possibility space, rather than predicting certainty, as describing what could happen depending on collective choices, as providing a vision of potential futures that can inspire or warn. They're not a script to be followed, but scenarios to be considered, data points in risk assessment and hope cultivation. December will come, whether we believe the prophecies or not, whether we prepare or ignore, whether we see 3i Atlantis as a threat, gift, or irrelevance. What we choose to do with those perceptions determines which prophecy, if any, proves accurate, not because the prophecy caused the outcome, but because our response to prophecy shaped the choices that led to the outcome. Chapter 6. The Dark Forest Dilemma. Imagine the galaxy as a forest at night, vast, ancient, full of life, but shrouded in darkness. Every civilization is hunter and prey simultaneously, aware that revealing its position invites attention that might be hostile. The optimal strategy in such an environment is silence, camouflage, moving carefully through the dark without making a sound or light that draws predators. This is the dark forest theory, Liu Cixin's elegant and terrifying solution to Fermi's paradox. The question of why we haven't detected obvious signs of alien intelligence, despite the universe being old enough and large enough that intelligence should be common, The math is straightforward. Our galaxy contains approximately 200 billion stars, many with planets, some percentage of those in inhabitable zones. Even conservative estimates of abiogenesis probability suggest millions of potentially life-bearing worlds. Life on Earth developed complexity and intelligence over billions of years. But the universe is nearly 14 billion years old, and our galaxy formed over 12 billion years ago. Civilizations that arose even a million years before us, a blink in cosmic time, would have technological capabilities we can barely imagine. They should be visible, their engineering projects detectable, their signals pervading space, and yet we see nothing but silence. The Great Silence. Dark forest theory explains this through game theory. If you don't know whether another civilization is friendly or hostile, and if technological capability scales such that advanced civilizations can destroy primitive ones effortlessly, then any contact represents an existential risk. You can't assess intentions from afar, can't negotiate from a position of weakness, can't defend if you're outmatched. The safest strategy is remaining hidden, eliminating any civilization you do detect before they can detect you and potentially eliminate you first. The galaxy isn't empty. It's just that everyone who survived long enough learned to hide. This is where 3i Atlantis becomes terrifying. If it's artificial, if it's a probe from an advanced civilization, its arrival breaks our camouflage. We're lit up, visible, known, and we have no idea what that means. Is 3i Atlantis a scout for an invasion fleet, assessing our defenses and resources? Is it a first contact probe from a civilization extending a peaceful greeting? Or is it an automated system executing programming determined so long ago that its creators no longer exist? Following mission parameters that might not account for current realities, Avi Loeb has been explicit about this risk. He's developed what he calls the Loeb scale, ranking interstellar objects from 0, definitely natural, to 10, definitely technological and imminently threatening. 3i Atlas sits at 4, meaning there's roughly a 40% chance it's not of natural origin, significant enough that precautions are warranted, but not so high that panic is justified. But that ranking could change rapidly with new data. If 3i Atlas releases smaller objects in December, if it alters course, if it transmits signals, or exhibits behaviors impossible to explain naturally, the ranking jumps. At rank 8 or 9, we're talking about a confirmed artificial object with unknown but potentially hostile intent. At rank 10, invasion is underway, and defensive measures are imperative. The problem is, we have no defenses worth mentioning. Our most advanced weapons, nuclear missiles, have range measured in thousands of kilometers, speeds measured in kilometers per second. 3i Atlas is moving at 58 kilometers per second, and will exit our solar system entirely within months. We can't intercept it, can't board it, can't disable it, can't even communicate with it effectively, because we don't know its language, its protocols, its intentions. We're ants watching an elephant walk through our colony, hoping it doesn't step on us because we have no capacity to influence its path. I don't expect to receive data from JUICE's 3i Atlas observations until February 2026, 3 months after the observations occur. By then, 3i Atlas will have continued its outward journey past Earth's orbit, approaching Jupiter, and whatever it did or didn't do during December will already be history. This delay is frustrating, but unavoidable given orbital mechanics and telecommunications limitations. It also means that if something significant happens in December, if 3i Atlas releases smaller objects as remote viewers predicted, if it transmits signals or alters course or exhibits behaviors requiring immediate response, we'll be reacting without benefit of the best observational data. We'll have ground-based telescope observations, which are valuable but limited by atmospheric distortion and the object's relatively faint magnitude. We'll have space telescope observations from Hubble and Webb. If those assets are directed toward 3I Atlas, but scheduling those observations requires advanced planning and competing priorities from other astronomical programs. Amateur astronomers have been filling gaps in professional coverage, and they'll be critical in December. The global network of amateur telescopes, coordinated through online platforms and driven by genuine curiosity rather than institutional constraints, can provide near-continuous monitoring as 3I Atlas becomes visible again. They've already captured images during the object's approach that reveal details professional astronomers missed, and their contributions will only increase as professional assets remain focused on other targets or remain tangled in bureaucratic delays. One amateur in particular, a YouTuber known as Dobsonian Power, captured an image during the Mars flyby period that sparked intense online debate. The image, enhanced through stacking multiple exposures to increase the signal-to-noise ratio, appeared to show angular structures within 3I Atlas's coma. Dark features that didn't match the diffuse distribution expected from simple dust and gas. The structures looked geometric, almost artificial, leading to wild speculation about internal machinery or surface installations visible through the surrounding material. Critics argued the features were artifacts of image processing, pareidolia, where human pattern recognition sees faces and structures in random noise. But the debate itself highlights how starved we are for clear data, how much interpretation is required when dealing with ambiguous images from an object millions of miles away. The periodic variations detected in 3I Atlas's brightness and position during August and September observations add another layer of complexity. Preliminary analysis published in an astronomer's telegram suggested a possible 4-hour period in positional deviations, with a corresponding 2-hour period in brightness variations. These could indicate rotation of an irregularly shaped object with different faces reflecting different amounts of sunlight as the object tumbles through space, but they could also indicate active processes venting from specific locations, engines firing impulses, or internal dynamics that manifest as external variations. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter's animated sequence from the Mars flyby showed 3I Atlas exhibiting more variation than background stars, suggesting real changes rather than observational artifacts. Those changes could be outgassing plumes appearing and disappearing as ices in specific regions are heated by sunlight, then move into shadow, or they could be something else, deployed probes entering and leaving the field of view. Structural elements moving. Activity that has nothing to do with sublimating ices and everything to do with intelligence directing operations. We need to be careful here not to overinterpret ambiguous data to fit preferred narratives. Human psychology is wired to see patterns and assign agency, to perceive intention behind events that might be entirely mechanical or random. This is how religions form, how conspiracy theories propagate, how we make sense of a complex world by creating stories that give events meaning beyond mere occurrence. 3I Atlas might be doing nothing except existing, moving according to physics, losing mass through natural processes, rotating from ancient collisions or gravitational interactions. And all the anomalies we've discussed could have prosaic explanations we simply haven't discovered yet. But acknowledging that possibility doesn't mean dismissing the anomalies. Science advances by taking observations seriously, by not being satisfied with the hand-waving dismissals that don't actually explain the data. 3I Atlas lacks a tail when it should have one. Its chemistry is wrong for comets we know. Its trajectory is suspiciously aligned with planetary orbits. Its mass exceeds what its size should allow given observed brightness. These are facts requiring explanation. And if natural explanations exist, let's find them through rigorous analysis rather than assuming they exist and moving on. Avi Loeb has been tireless in advocating for exactly this approach. Treat 3i Atlas as potentially anomalous until proven otherwise. Direct resources toward observation and analysis. Gather maximum data while the opportunity exists. His critics accuse him of attention-seeking, of promoting alien hypotheses to maintain a media profile. Maybe there's truth to that. Incentives shape all behavior, including scientific behavior. But Loeb has also put his reputation and time where his advocacy is, leading the Galileo project to develop monitoring systems that will track millions of objects per year, analyzing them for signatures of technology, taking seriously the possibility that we might not be alone and that evidence of others might be in our data already. We just need to look with the right tools and open minds. The Galileo project represents a practical implementation of astroarchaeology, the search for artifacts rather than radio signals. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has focused for decades on electromagnetic transmissions, assuming that advanced civilizations broadcast their presence intentionally, or that their routine communications leak into space as detectable technosignatures. But Loeb argues that artifacts, physical objects in space, might be more numerous and longer-lasting than signals. A probe launched millions of years ago continues operating, or at least existing, long after the civilizations that built it might have collapsed or transcended. Finding one such artifact. Confirm intelligence elsewhere, even if that intelligence is now extinct or unreachable. 3i Atlas could be that first artifact, the first confirmed detection of technology from beyond Earth, or it could be second, or third, or 10th, depending on whether Oumuamua and other candidates are eventually recognized as artificial. The resistance to accepting any interstellar object as artificial comes partly from legitimate scientific conservatism, extraordinary claims requiring extraordinary evidence, but partly from psychological discomfort with the implications. If 3i Atlas is probed, then someone sent it. Someone knows we're here. Someone capable of interstellar travel has us on their charts. That changes everything about how we understand, stand, our place in the cosmos, our isolation, our uniqueness, our future possibilities and risks. The December observation window is critical, not just for gathering data, but for testing predictions. Remote viewers said December is when things happen, when probes deploy, when plasma events occur, when choices crystallize. Prophetic sources said December is a fork in the timeline, when humanity's path diverges based on how we respond to revelation. If December comes and goes, and 3i Atlas does nothing unusual, just continues outward as a bright comet would, then the predictions are wrong, the prophecies are false, and we can file this whole episode under interesting anomaly, but ultimately natural. If December brings was anything unexpected releases, signals, maneuvers, electromagnetic disruptions, then every prediction gains credibility, and every dismissal looks premature. I find myself in a strange position, intellectually balanced between competing impulses. The scientist in me wants to default to natural explanations, to not invoke aliens, or ancient programs, or consciousness, expanding technologies without exhausting every conventional possibility first. The skeptic in me sees how easily humans create elaborate mythologies from limited data, how strongly we want to believe we're special, chosen, about to experience a transformation that makes current struggles worthwhile. But the honest observer in me can't ignore the pattern, the convergence of anomalies that don't individually prove anything, but collectively suggest something genuinely unusual is occurring. What would constitute proof? What observation would move 3i Atlas from possibly artificial to probably artificial to definitely artificial? Loeb suggested criteria. Electromagnetic transmissions from the object of frequencies and patterns not explained by natural sources. Course corrections that can't be attributed to outgassing. Thrust, active navigation, maintaining trajectory. deployment of smaller objects that themselves exhibit non-gravitational acceleration, structures visible at sufficient resolution that geometry clearly indicates design rather than natural formation. Any of these would shift probability dramatically. We don't have any of them yet, but December might provide them if we're looking carefully. The synthesis of everything we've examined throughout this investigation points to several conclusions, some comfortable and some deeply unsettling. First, 3I Atlas is genuinely anomalous, exhibiting characteristics that don't fit well with our understanding of interstellar comets. This doesn't prove artificiality, but demands serious consideration of that possibility alongside natural explanations. Second, multiple independent sources, from scientific observations to remote viewing sessions to prophetic warnings, are converging on similar timelines and scenarios. This convergence could reflect shared cultural expectations and contamination across sources, or it could reflect different people perceiving the same underlying pattern through different methodologies. Third, institutional responses to 3I Atlas have been inadequate, marked by delayed data release, poor coordination across agencies, and failure to treat the object with appropriate seriousness. Given its anomalies and the stakes involved if it's not natural, this could be normal bureaucratic dysfunction, or it could indicate coordination at levels not visible to public preparation for scenarios we're not being told about. Fourth, we as civilization are unprepared for a first contact scenario, whether hostile, neutral, or friendly. We lack protocols, lack unified response capability, abilities, lack frameworks for even understanding what contact means when the contactees might be biological, artificial, transdimensional, or forms of existence we don't have categories for. And fifth, the conversation itself matters. The fact that millions of people are tracking 3I Atlas, discussing its implications, questioning official narratives, demanding transparency. This represents evolution in how we engage with cosmos. We're not passively accepting whatever authorities tell us about space. We're actively participating in discovery, using distributed intelligence and open-source investigation to fill gaps that institutions leave. This is new. This is powerful. And this is trend that continues regardless of what 3I Atlas turns out to be. December will clarify much, but not everything. Even if 3I Atlas does something unambiguous, reveals itself as clearly technological. The questions multiply rather than resolve who sent it, why, what do they want, how do we respond? Do we have any say in what happens next, or are we just along for the ride? Passengers in a process we didn't choose and can't control. The emergence from behind the sun is literal, 3I Atlas becoming visible again. But it's also metaphorical truth emerging from obscurity, reality revealing itself whether we're ready or not. What I hope for, what I think many hope for, is revelation without catastrophe, contact without conquest, transformation without trauma. The optimistic scenarios where 3I Atlantis is messenger from a civilization wishing us well, where technologies are shared that solve our energy and environmental crises, where we're welcomed into a galactic community and given guidance for navigating challenges we face. These scenarios are possible. Nothing in the data excludes them. But the pessimistic scenarios are equally possible, and the tragedy would be if we learned too late that we could have prepared, could have united, could have presented ourselves as worthy of preservation or partnership, but didn't because we were too divided, too distracted, too committed to denying possibilities that made us uncomfortable. 3I Atlas is a mirror as much as a mystery. What we see in it reflects what we bring to observation. Those expecting threats see a predator. Those expecting salvation see a savior. Those expecting nothing see a comet. All of us are looking at the same data, the same object, the same trajectory through our solar system. The different interpretations reveal more about us than about it. We are a species capable of reaching for stars. but still reaching for weapons when we meet something we don't understand. We are a species capable of incredible cooperation, but fragmenting into tribes when stressed. We are a species on the threshold of either becoming a cosmic civilization or destroying ourselves through failure to transcend our origins. 3i Atlas doesn't determine which path we take, we do. The object is a catalyst, an event, a data point. But the choices are ours, how we respond to uncertainty, how we treat evidence that challenges our assumptions, how we balance precaution with paranoia, openness with skepticism, hope with realism. These are tests of our readiness, not for 3i Atlas specifically, but for a future that includes the cosmos rather than just one world. We were always going to face this test eventually. If not now, then later. If not this object, then another. The universe is too large, too old, too full of possibilities for Earth to remain forever isolated. 3i Atlas is merely the opening act, the first clear note in a symphony that's been playing around us, but we're only beginning to hear. As December approaches and telescopes turn toward the region of sky where 3i Atlas will reappear, I'm reminded that the etymology of revelation comes from Latin revelare, to unveil, to draw back the curtain, something hidden becoming visible, not creation of new truth, but disclosure of truth that always existed but was obscured, whether 3i Atlas is rock or ship, natural or artificial, scout or artifact. It's removing veils, forcing us to confront questions we've been comfortable leaving theoretical. Are we alone? Are we safe? Are we ready? The answers, whatever they are, won't depend on the object, but on how we change in learning them. And maybe that's the point. The universe doesn't care whether we call 3i Atlas comet or craft, as long as we're asking the questions and letting the asking change us into something capable of handling whatever answers come. Chapter 8. The Wow Connection. If you're just tuning in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Then drop a comment telling us where you're listening from, what time it is there, and whether you think we're alone in this universe, or if something out there has been watching us all along. And if you want to help this community grow, share this on X, Facebook, Reddit, or your favorite messenger. Thank you for having our back. August 15th, 1977. A date that would haunt astronomers for nearly half a century. The Big Ear Radio Telescope at Ohio State University. University detected something that shouldn't exist. A narrow-band radio signal at 1420.4056 MHz, right on the hydrogen line. The frequency many scientists consider the universal hailing channel for the interstellar communication. Jerry Eman, reviewing the computer printout days later, saw the spike in intensity and scribbled one word in red pen. Wow. That annotation gave the signal its name, and launched decades of speculation, debate, and ultimately frustration. The signal lasted exactly 72 seconds, the full window during which Big Ear could observe it, and then it vanished. Never to repeat. Never to be found again despite countless follow-up scans. The origin traced back to the constellation Sagittarius, a region teeming with stars near the center of our galaxy. For years, this remained one of SETI's most tantalizing anomalies, a cosmic mystery wrapped in radio waves and statistical improbability. Some dismissed it as natural astrophysical noise, others as comet hydrogen clouds, though that theory was thoroughly debunked. The signal bore the hallmarks of intelligent origin: narrow band, strong intensity, perfect frequency, but without repetition, without confirmation. It remained forever in the realm of maybe. Fast forward to July 1st, 2025. The Atlas Survey Telescope in Chile spots something moving through our solar system at impossible speeds. something from beyond, from interstellar space. The third such visitor we've ever confirmed, they named it 3I Atlas, and as trajectory analysis begins, something extraordinary emerges. This object, this comet or craft or whatever it is, traces its path back through the cosmos toward the same galactic neighborhood, Sagittarius, the same constellation, the same general direction. Avi Loeb, the Harvard astrophysicist who's become something of a lightning rod in the scientific community for his willingness to consider technological explanations for anomalous objects, ran the calculations. On August the 12th, 1977, 3 days before the WOW signal detection, 3I Atlas was at a distance of approximately 600 astronomical units from us, about 600 times the Earth-Sun separation. That translates to a light travel time of roughly 3 days. The object's sky coordinates at that moment. Right ascension 19 hours, 40 minutes. Declination negative 19 degrees. Compare that to the WOW signal's origin point. The separation approximately 4 degrees in right ascension and 8 degrees in declination. Think about that for a moment. 4 to 8 degrees of separation across the entire celestial sphere. Loeb calculated the probability of 2 random directions in the sky being aligned to that level, about 0.6%, less than 1 chance in 150. Not impossible, but highly unlikely. Statistically significant enough that it demands serious consideration rather than casual dismissal. But here's where it gets interesting. If the WOW signal originated from 3I Atlas, how powerful would the transmitter need to be? The detected intensity ranged from 54 to 212 Jansky, with a bandwidth of about 10 kilohertz. At 600 astronomical units, working backward through the inverse square law, that corresponds to a source power of 0.5 to 2 gigawatts. To put that in perspective, that's the output of a typical nuclear reactor here on Earth. Not beyond the realm of technological possibility for an advanced civilization, but certainly indicative of deliberate high-energy transmission. The radio telescope that detected the WOW signal was listening specifically at the hydrogen line frequency, 1420 megahertz, because hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. Any civilization capable of radio astronomy would know this. It's the cosmic hello frequency, the place you'd broadcast if you wanted to be found. And here we have an interstellar object, moving at 58 kilometers per second, arriving from precisely the direction where that signal originated 48 years earlier. Now, the skeptics will point out, and they're not wrong, that Sagittarius is a massive region of the sky. It contains the galactic center, billions of stars, countless potential sources. The chance alignment could be just that. Chance. But the skeptics also can't explain why 3I Atlas exhibits so many other anomalies that we'll explore throughout this investigation. The missing cometary tail, the impossible mass to trajectory ratio, the alignment with our ecliptic plane, the pure nickel emissions with zero iron. Each anomaly on its own might be dismissible. Together, they form a pattern that's harder to ignore. Consider the temporal coincidence as well. 5 days after the WOW signal detection, NASA launched Voyager 2 on August 20th, 1977, humanity's most ambitious journey to the outer planets and beyond. Now, Voyager 2 continues its path into interstellar space, carrying the golden record, a message to any intelligence that might intercept it. Was the WOW signal a response to earlier radio leakage from Earth television broadcasts, radar signals, military communications, all of which have been radiating into space since the 1940s? If so, the timing works. Signals traveling at light speed from Earth in the late 1930s or early 1940s would have reached the location where 3I Atlas was positioned around 1977, assuming it's been traveling at constant velocity for billions of years, which raises another question. If 3i Atlas did transmit the wow signal, why only once? For 72 seconds. And then silence. One possibility is that it wasn't broadcasting continuously, but rather sending a pulse, a ping, a hello, specifically timed for when Earth rotated into the beam. The Big Ear telescope had 2 feed horns that observed the sky 3 minutes apart. If the signal had been continuous, both horns should have detected it, but only one did. This suggests either the source moved, which astronomical objects generally don't do on such short time scales, or the transmission was brief and targeted. Avi Loeb has called for radio telescopes to monitor 3i Atlas as it continues its journey through our solar system. As of now, no radio observatory has reported data on the object. We're flying blind in the electromagnetic spectrum, focusing on visible light, infrared, ultraviolet, but ignoring the very band where the original signal appeared. It's like trying to solve a murder mystery while deliberately ignoring the weapon. The urgency here isn't just academic curiosity. If 3i Atlas is transmitting, if it sent out the wow signal, if it's capable of gigawatt-level broadcasts, then we're dealing with technology, not geology. And technology implies intelligence. Intelligence implies intent. Intent requires assessment. Loeb has proposed what he calls the Loeb scale for ranking interstellar objects. 0, meaning definitely natural. 10, meaning definitely technological and an imminent threat. He currently ranks 3i Atlas at 4, meaning there's a 40% chance it's not of natural origin. That's not fringe speculation. That's a quantitative assessment based on observable anomalies. A 40% chance that we're not looking at a comet, but at a craft. A 40% chance that the wow signal wasn't random noise, but a deliberate transmission from the object now passing through our cosmic backyard. The convergence of evidence is what makes this compelling. We have a famous, unexplained radio signal. We have an anomalous interstellar object. Both trace back to the same galactic direction. Both involve the hydrogen frequency or hydrogen-related chemistry. Both occurred at moments of human spaceflight expansion. The wow signal happened during the Voyager era, our first serious attempt at interstellar outreach. 3i Atlas arrives during a period of renewed focus on space exploration, private spaceflight, and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So far, the official scientific response has been muted. NASA characterizes 3i Atlas as a comet. Tom Statler, NASA's lead scientist for solar system small bodies, stated it looks like a comet. Does comet things, very strongly resembles comets we know. But that assessment came early, based on limited data, as observations accumulated showing no traditional tail, showing mass loss with no trajectory change, showing chemical composition unlike any known comet. The certainty has wavered, not publicly. Institutions don't reverse themselves easily, but in the questions being asked, in the observation time being allocated, in the quiet acknowledgments that yes, this one is unusual. The amateur astronomy community has been more direct. Telescopes around the world are tracking 3i Atlas, capturing images, running spectroscopy, analyzing light curves. Some of those images, particularly during the Mars flyby in early October, showed structures that don't fit cometary models, angular features, reflective surfaces, periodic variations in brightness that suggest rotation of a non-uniform object. NASA's government shutdown, which we'll examine in detail later, meant that critical data from Mars orbiters wasn't immediately released. When it finally emerged, it showed an object that looked less like a dusty snowball and more like something with definite geometry. And still, no one is listening in radio frequencies. The Very Large Array could do it. The Arecibo Observatory could have done it before its collapse. Any number of radio telescopes worldwide have the capability. But telescope time is precious. allocated months or years in advance, and redirecting resources to monitor an object that mainstream science insists is just a comet requires justification that most researchers aren't willing to risk their careers on. It's the same institutional inertia that delayed recognition of the first interstellar object, Oumuamua, is genuinely anomalous. By the time consensus formed that it was weird enough to warrant closer study, it had already left, too faint and far for detailed follow-up. The difference with 3I Atlas is that we still have time, as of now. It's passed behind the sun from our perspective, hidden in the glare. But it will re-emerge in early December 2025. November and December present ideal observation conditions, both geometrically and because the recent perihelion passage should have increased its brightness if it's a comet. That's when we'll see whether it behaves as expected or reveals something that forces a reevaluation. That's when radio telescopes must be pointed at it to check for any transmission around the hydrogen line. Because if the WOW signal was 3I Atlas saying hello in 1977, and if 3I Atlas is now in our solar system, then the response time for that hello was 48 years, covering a distance of hundreds of light years at sublight speeds. An object launched from the source star of the WOW signal would have taken thousands or millions of years to reach us, depending on distance and velocity. But if 3I Atlas was already in transit, already approaching, already on its way, and it sent out a pulse as it passed that 600 AU mark, then the geometry works, the timing works. The correlation becomes not coincidence, but confirmation. Of course, this opens terrifying possibilities. If it was a warning shot, a reconnaissance signal, and this is what we're capable of demonstration, then what happens next? If it was a hailing frequency, an attempt at contact, then our silence in response, our failure to even monitor the right frequency sends a message to ignorance or indifference, neither of which inspires confidence in a species that might be on the verge of cosmic contact. And if it was neither warning nor greeting, but simply navigational, a pulse to measure distances or check for hazards, then we're not the audience at all. We're just in the way. The Sagittarius connection matters for another reason. That region of the sky toward the galactic center is where the stellar density is highest. More stars, more planets. Statistically, more chances for life and intelligence to develop. SETI programs have long focused searches there, knowing that any civilization in that direction has a higher probability of having neighbors, of having developed communication technologies, of having reasons to broadcast. It's the cosmic Times Square, and 3I Atlas emerged from that crowd. What we're looking at, potentially, is the universe's way of testing our attention span. Are we paying attention? Are we asking the right questions? Are we willing to look beyond the comfortable explanations and sit with the discomfort of not knowing? The WOW signal was a test we failed. We didn't follow up effectively, didn't develop persistent monitoring strategies, didn't treat it with the urgency it deserved. 48 years later, we have another chance, another anomaly from the same direction, another opportunity to either understand or ignore. The science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke once said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, but he also said that the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to venture beyond them into the impossible. 3I Atlas, sitting at that boundary between natural and artificial, between rock and ship, between comet and communication device, is forcing us to venture there. And the WOW signal, that 72-second burst of radio energy that captivated a generation of SETI researchers, may turn out to be the voice of the object we're now watching cross our sky. Not a mystery from the past, but a message about the present. Not an unanswered question, but the first part of a conversation we didn't realize had already begun. The night sky has witnessed countless objects pass through our solar system. Over the billions of years, Earth has circled the sun, most of them unremarked, unobserved, invisible to eyes that weren't yet evolved to look upward and wonder what those points of light might be. 3-Eye Atlas is different only because we're here to see it, to measure it, to question what it means. In 100 years, or 1,000, when humanity has spread beyond Earth, assuming we survive that long, we'll look back at this moment and see either the beginning of cosmic awareness or a missed opportunity, a warning sign we didn't heed because comfort was easier than curiosity, and dismissal safer than investigation. I think about all the people throughout history who looked at the sky and wondered whether those lights were just lights, or whether something looked back. The ancient astronomers tracking planets, calling them wanderers because they moved against fixed stars, building myths to explain what they couldn't yet measure. The medieval scholars preserving knowledge through dark ages, copying manuscripts about the cosmos, while religious authorities claimed Earth was the center of everything, and questioning that claim was heresy. The Renaissance revolutionaries who pointed telescopes skyward and saw that planets were worlds, that stars were suns, that the universe was vaster and stranger than mythology allowed. Each generation expanded the boundary of the known, pushed into territory that previous generations couldn't imagine, faced resistance from those invested in old certainties. We're in that position now, at the edge of expansion that makes previous shifts look incremental. From geocentric to heliocentric was a change in address. Earth not the center, but still home. From solar system to galaxy was a change in neighborhood size, recognizing our sun as one among billions. From galaxy to universe of galaxies was a change in scale comprehension. Billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars. The next shift, if it comes, is a change in isolation status. We're not alone, never were. The universe is full of intelligence and forms we're only beginning to conceive, and 3-Eye Atlas might be our first confirmed encounter with that truth, or it might be a dry run for when the encounter becomes undeniable. The data we've examined, the testimonies we've heard, the anomalies we've tried to explain, they form an incomplete picture that's uncomfortable for minds that want certainty, that want definitive answers, that want the universe to be comprehensible and manageable, but incompleteness is honest. We don't know what 3-Eye Atlas is, not fully, not yet. We have hypotheses ranging from a natural comet with unusual but explicable properties to an artificial probe from a civilization millions of years more advanced than us. Both extremes are possible, and so is everything in between. What we do with that uncertainty tells us who we are, as much as what 3-Eye Atlas turns out to be tells us what it is. I hope we choose curiosity over fear, investigation over dismissal, transparency over secrecy. I hope December brings clarity, whether that clarity confirms natural explanations and lets us file this as an interesting astronomical event, or whether it confirms artificiality and forces us to grapple with implications we've been avoiding. Either way, the asking matters. The community that's formed around 3-Eye Atlas, people from every country sharing observations, debating interpretations, demanding better data. They're demonstrating what humanity can be when we focus on cosmos rather than conflict, when we look outward rather than turning weapons inward. Thank you for staying with me through this investigation, for bringing your attention and intelligence to questions that don't have easy answers. If this exploration resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more deep investigations into topics that sit at the intersection of science and mystery. The universe is full of such topics, waiting for minds willing to examine them without prejudice toward particular outcomes. And as always, this content is for educational and entertainment purposes, presenting multiple perspectives on ambiguous data. Draw your own conclusions, verify claims independently, and maintain healthy skepticism toward anyone claiming certainty where uncertainty remains. The lights are going out here as I finish this writing, an appropriate metaphor for an ending focused on objects in dark. But darkness isn't absence. It's full of things we haven't learned to see yet. And every point of light is an invitation to look closer, to ask better questions, to accept that the universe owes us no explanations, but offers endless opportunities to discover them if we're willing to try. 3i Atlas, whatever it is, gave us such opportunity. Whether we seized it or let it pass, we'll know soon enough. Good night, wherever you are, and may your skies be clear when December comes and 3i Atlas returns to view, carrying with it whatever truths or mysteries it holds, indifferent to our interpretations but subject to our observations, a visitor in space that became a mirror for our hopes and fears, our curiosity and caution, our readiness or lack thereof for a cosmos that's been here all along, waiting for us to grow up enough to see it. Right now, as you listen to these words, an object is traveling at 210,000 kilometers per hour. It's hiding behind our sun. In 24 hours on October 29th, 2025, 3i Atlas will reach perihelion, its closest approach to our star, and what happens next could rewrite everything. Harvard's Avi Loeb just increased his probability assessment to 40% that this isn't natural. The Mars images NASA won't release during the shutdown. The alignment with the 1977 WOW signal that has a 0.6% chance of being random. The 33 billion ton mass that shouldn't exist. Listen carefully, because in the next moment, this interstellar visitor will either shatter into fragments like every comet before it, or it will do something that confirms what some scientists have been whispering about, but afraid to say out loud. It could release probes, self-replicating probes, and the trajectory calculations show that between November 21st and December 5th, one of them could reach Earth. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, what time it is there, and whether you think 3i Atlas will break apart tomorrow or reveal something more. And if you enjoy deep dives into cosmic mysteries, please like and subscribe and share this on X, Facebook, Reddit, or your messenger. Thank you for always having our back. Chapter 1. The Silence Before the Storm. Something extraordinary is happening right now with 3i Atlas, and the silence from our space agencies is deafening. While you and I wait for answers, this 7-mile-wide object continues its journey through our inner solar system at speeds that make our fastest rockets look like they're standing still. But here's what makes today different from every other day since its discovery on July 1st. Tomorrow marks the moment of truth, the perihelion passage that will finally answer the question that's been keeping astronomers awake at night. Is this a comet? Or is it something else entirely? The European Space Agency just released their Mars orbiter images from October 3rd, and they show something that has the internet in an uproar. A fuzzy white dot, they say. But enhancement of those images by independent researchers reveals an elongated, almost cylindrical shape that doesn't match any comet we've ever seen. The raw data from NASA's Perseverance rover tells an even stranger story. Amateur astronomers have been stacking these images, 20 frames at a time, finding what astrophotographer Simeon Schmaus describes as a faint smudge exactly where 3i Atlas should have appeared in the Martian sky. But that smudge has structure to it, structure that suggests this object might not be a simple ball of ice and rock. Think about this timing for a moment. The United States government shutdown began precisely when 3i Atlas made its closest approach to Mars. NASA's public communication channels went dark. The high-resolution images from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's high-rise camera, which should have given us a 30-kilometer-per-pixel resolution of this object, remain locked behind bureaucratic walls. Some call it coincidence. Others whisper about information control. But the amateur astronomy community isn't waiting for permission to investigate. A YouTuber known as Dobsonian Power managed to capture something remarkable through a solar telescope, tracking 3I Atlas as it approaches the Sun. The images show what he describes as structural anomalies, features that don't belong on a natural comet. Within hours, his video had hundreds of thousands of views, with comment sections erupting in speculation. Professional astronomers remain notably silent, bound by institutional protocols and peer review processes that move at glacial speeds, while this object races through our solar system at 61 kilometers per second. The Swift Observatory's detection of hydroxyl gas, the chemical fingerprint of water, should have been reassuring. Here was proof that 3I Atlas was releasing water like any normal comet, except it wasn't normal at all. The object was losing 40 kilograms of water per second, while positioned nearly 3 times farther from the Sun than Earth, in a region of space where water ice should remain frozen solid. Dennis Bodowitz from Auburn University called it reading a note from another planetary system. But even he couldn't explain why this water activity was occurring at such an impossible distance. Let me paint you a picture of what we're dealing with here. Imagine an object potentially 7 billion years old, older than our Sun, older than our solar system, carrying within it the chemical signatures of a completely different stellar nursery. The modeling, done by Matthew Hopkins and his team, suggests 3I Atlas formed during the Milky Way's thick disk era, a period of intense star formation that ended billions of years before Earth existed. This isn't just a visitor from another star system. It's a messenger from another epoch of galactic history. The numbers themselves tell a story that doesn't add up. Richard Close, working with Avi Loeb and Peter Veers, published calculations showing that 3I Atlas mass is at least 33 billion tons. To put that in perspective, that is 3 to 5 orders of magnitude more massive than the previous 2 interstellar visitors, Oumuamua and Borisov. Statistically, we should have detected 100,000 objects the size of him or her before finding something as massive as 3I Atlas. Yet here it is, the third interstellar object we've ever confirmed, and it's a giant among cosmic wanderers. The trajectory adds another layer to the mystery. I Atlas approaches our solar system on a retrograde orbit, moving opposite to the direction of all our planets. Its orbital inclination of 175 degrees means it's essentially flying upside down and backwards through our cosmic neighborhood. But here's where it gets strange. Despite this unusual approach angle, its path aligns with our ecliptic plane to within 5 degrees. The probability of this happening randomly is 0.2%. Add the timing of its close encounters with Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, and the combined probability drops to 0.0005%. Tomorrow, as 3I Atlas swings around the Sun at its closest approach of 203 million kilometers, it will experience thermal stress unlike anything it's encountered in perhaps millions of years. Solar radiation will deposit gigawatts of power on its surface. If this is a natural comet, we should see spectacular outgassing, possibly even complete fragmentation as volatile ices explosively sublime. The DS spacecraft will be watching, as will ground-based telescopes, once the object emerges from the Sun's glare in November. Chapter 2. The Wow Connection. But what if 3I Atlas doesn't break apart? What if, as Avi Loeb suggests with his 30 to 40% probability assessment, this object maintains its structural integrity because it was designed to... The implications ripple backward through time in ways that make even seasoned astronomers uncomfortable. Because 48 years ago, something happened that might be connected to what we're witnessing today. August 15th, 1977. Jerry Amon sat at Ohio State University reviewing data from the Big Ear radio telescope when he saw something that made him write a single word in red pen that would echo through decades of scientific mystery. Wow. The signal lasted 72 seconds. Came from the constellation Sagittarius, and has never been detected again despite countless attempts. It became the most tantalizing potential evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence ever recorded. Until now, no one had a plausible source for it. Enter 3I Atlas and a calculation that sends chills down your spine. Loeb traced the object's trajectory backward, accounting for gravitational influences and the lack of non-gravitational acceleration that makes this object so anomalously massive. On August 12, 1977, 3 days before the WOW signal was detected, 3I Atlas was positioned at approximately 600 astronomical units from Earth. The light traveled time from that distance 3 days. The directional alignment between 3I Atlas's position then and the WOW signal's origin point differs by only 4 degrees in right ascension and 8 degrees in declination. The probability of this alignment occurring by chance is 0.6%. Now, consider the power requirements for 3I Atlas to have transmitted the WOW signal from 600 AU away and have it detected with the intensity recorded by the Big Ear telescope. The object would need a transmitter outputting between 0.5 and 2 gigawatts. That's the equivalent of a nuclear reactor, the kind of power source you might expect on an interstellar probe designed to operate for millions or billions of years in the darkness between stars. Loeb notes that if 3I Atlas is nuclear-powered, it would explain several anomalies, including the dust release patterns that don't match typical cometary sublimation. The WOW signal itself carries signatures that have puzzled scientists for nearly 5 decades. It appeared at 1,420 megahertz, remarkably close to the hydrogen line frequency that scientists have long speculated alien civilizations might use for communication, because hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. The signal was narrow-band, meaning it was concentrated in a specific frequency rather than spread across the spectrum like natural phenomena typically are. It showed a rise and fall pattern consistent with the Big Ear telescope's beams sweeping across a distant point source. Everything about it suggested artificiality, but without a source, it remained an enigma. The green glow observed in enhanced images of 3I Atlas adds another piece to this cosmic puzzle. Spectroscopic analysis reveals this isn't the typical green of diatomic carbon that gives many comets their characteristic color. Instead, it's dominated by nickel emissions without the accompanying iron you'd expect from natural space rocks. Some researchers have noted this spectral signature resembles industrial nickel alloys more than primordial solar system materials. Is this evidence of artificial construction, or simply an exotic composition from an alien stellar environment? Think about what we're potentially looking at here. An object that was already ancient when our solar system formed, traveling through interstellar space for eons, possibly transmitting signals at calculated intervals. The 72-second duration of the WOW signal might not have been random. It could represent a specific data packet, a beacon, or even a timing signature designed to attract attention. The fact that we've never detected it again doesn't mean it stopped transmitting. It might mean 3I Atlas was rotating, its transmitter sweeping through space like a lighthouse beam that happened to cross Earth's position exactly once in our detection window. The technical implications stagger the imagination. If 3I Atlas has been transmitting intermittently for millions of years, it would need not just a power source, but sophisticated systems for maintaining orientation, managing thermal cycles, and protecting sensitive equipment from cosmic radiation. The object's apparent structural integrity after billions of years in space suggests either remarkable natural preservation or engineered durability beyond our current capabilities. Recent analysis of the Arecibo Observatory's archive data has uncovered additional anomalies that might connect to 3I Atlas. The Arecibo WOW project, examining decades of unexplained signals, found several weak detections at similar frequencies to the original WOW signal. Though none are strong, the timing and directions of these signals don't form an obvious pattern. But if 3I Atlas has been maneuvering using gravity assists from various stars over millions of years, its signal direction would appear random from Earth's perspective. The object's current behavior adds weight to the transmission hypothesis, unlike typical comets that begin outgassing as they approach the Sun. I Atlas showed unusual activity while still beyond Jupiter's orbit. The water detection by the Swift Observatory occurred at distances where sublimation should be impossible, unless the object was generating its own heat. A nuclear power source would explain this, as would active systems preparing for solar system entry. The anti-tail observed by Hubble, that forward-facing jet of material, could be exhausted from propulsion systems rather than simple solar-wind interaction. Radio astronomers worldwide are now scrambling to point their dishes at 3I Atlas as it approaches perihelion, but the Sun's radio noise makes detection challenging. The optimal observation window will come in November, when the object emerges from solar conjunction. If 3I Atlas transmits again, if it sends another wow signal as it swings past our Sun, we'll be ready. The Allen Telescope Array, the Very Large Array, and dozens of other radio observatories have coordinated observation schedules. Even amateur radio astronomers with software-defined radios are joining the search. Chapter 3. The Mothership Hypothesis. The most unsettling possibility about 3I Atlas isn't what it is, but what it might do tomorrow. As the object reaches perihelion, hidden from Earth's view by the Sun's glare, it will be in the perfect position to execute what Loeb calls a reverse solar Oberth maneuver. This gravitational slingshot technique could allow it to shed velocity and release smaller objects into bound orbits around our Sun. We wouldn't see it happen. We couldn't stop it if we wanted to. And by the time 3I Atlas emerges from behind the Sun in November, any deployed probes would already be on their way. The mathematics of probe deployment from a retrograde mothership are elegant and terrifying because 3I Atlas moves opposite to our planet's orbits. Any probes released with velocity vectors partially opposing the mothership's motion would have their speeds relative to the Sun dramatically reduced. They could drop into stable orbits throughout the inner solar system with minimal energy expenditure. The retrograde approach isn't a disadvantage. It's the perfect insertion strategy for seeding multiple planetary systems simultaneously. Consider the implications of self-replicating probes, a concept that 3I Atlas might be demonstrating. Each probe wouldn't need to be large, perhaps no bigger than a smartphone, equipped with basic sensors, communication systems, and most crucially, the ability to harvest materials and create copies of itself. Loeb's latest blog post mentions that these probes could spread through our solar system like dandelion seeds, each one capable of spawning countless others. Within years, not centuries, they could establish a comprehensive surveillance network throughout our cosmic neighborhood. The timing of potential probe releases aligns disturbingly well with planetary positions. Mars just passed within 29 million km of 3I Atlas on October 3rd. Earth's closest approach will occur on December the 19th at 1.8 astronomical units. Jupiter gets its turn in March 2026. Each encounter represents an opportunity for probe deployment, with the planet's gravity wells acting as capture mechanisms. The retrograde orbit means these encounters happen faster than typical, giving any defensive response less time to react. What would these probes look like based on the anomalous mass of 3I Atlas? We're dealing with technology far beyond human capabilities. The mothership alone masses 33 billion tons, suggesting its creators have access to energy and materials on scales we can barely imagine. Any probes it releases would likely be equally advanced, possibly incorporating technologies we haven't even theorized yet. They might be invisible to our detection methods, operating in electromagnetic spectrums we don't monitor, or using stealth technologies that make them indistinguishable from natural space debris. The European astronomer who posted anonymously on 4chan raised an even more exotic possibility. What if 3I Atlas isn't conventional matter at all? The dark matter bubble hypothesis sounds like science fiction, but it would explain several anomalies. The object's enormous mass, without corresponding brightness, the unusual light emission patterns, the way it seems to generate energy rather than simply reflecting sunlight. While most scientists dismiss this as speculation, the fact remains that 3I Atlas behaves unlike any natural object we've catalogued. Ground-based observations have revealed additional strangenesses that fuel the mothership hypothesis. The object's brightness variations don't follow. A pattern is expected from a rotating, irregularly shaped comet nucleus. Instead, they show periodicity that could indicate artificial structures or active systems. Some amateur astronomers report brief flashes of light that don't correspond to typical cometary outbursts. Are these glints from solar panels, communications lasers, the firing of positioning thrusters without better data? We can only speculate. The nuclear propulsion possibility deserves serious consideration. If 3I Atlas carries a fission or fusion reactor, it would explain the sustained water vapor production at impossible distances from the Sun. It would provide power for the hypothetical WOW signal transmission. It would enable course corrections that keep the object on its suspiciously precise trajectory. Most importantly, it would provide the energy needed to launch and support a fleet of mini-probes, the nickel-dominated emissions. Without corresponding iron, could be signatures of reactor shielding or exhaust products rather than natural mineralogy. Historical precedent exists for the mothership probe concept in our own space exploration plans, the Breakthrough Starshot project. It envisioned sending thousands of tiny probes to nearby star systems, each one a few grams of sensors and transmitters propelled by light sails. The Daedalus and Icarus studies explored using fusion-powered spacecraft to deploy multiple probes at target systems. What we're theorizing for 3I Atlas is essentially what we ourselves might do if we had the technology for interstellar exploration. The difference is that someone else might have had that technology millions of years ago. The self-replication aspect transforms the threat assessment entirely. Traditional SETI thinking assumed alien contact would involve radio signals or single visiting spacecraft. But self-replicating probes change the equation. Even if only one probe successfully establishes itself in our solar system, it could harvest asteroid materials to build copies. Those copies build more copies. Within decades, Earth could be surrounded by millions of alien observers, each one collecting data, possibly preparing for something we can't anticipate. The silence from government agencies takes on a different character in this context. If NASA or ESA detected evidence of probe deployment, would they announce it immediately? Or would there be classified briefings, crisis management meetings, attempts to avoid public panic while figuring out response options? The convenient timing of the U.S. government shutdown provides perfect cover for withholding information, while decision-makers scramble behind closed doors. We might not be experiencing a media blackout due to bureaucracy, but rather a deliberate information quarantine while authorities assess an unprecedented situation. Chapter 4. The Ancient Visitor. 7 billion years. Let that number sink in for a moment. When 3I Atlas began its journey, the universe was barely half its current age. Our sun didn't exist. The atoms that would eventually form Earth were still dispersed in molecular clouds. This object has been traveling through the cosmic dark since before our spiral arm of the Milky Way had even finished forming. And now it's here, carrying within its ancient structure secrets from an epoch of galactic history we can barely imagine. The age determination comes from multiple lines of evidence that converge on this staggering time frame. Matthew Hopkins and his team analyzed the object's orbital characteristics and traced them back through models of galactic evolution. 3I Atlas appears to originate from the thick disk population of the Milky Way, a structure that formed during a period of intense star formation between 9 and 13 billion years ago. The chemical signatures detected by spectroscopy support this. showing isotope ratios that differ markedly from solar system norms. What does 7 billion years of interstellar travel do to an object natural comets would have been eroded by cosmic rays? Their volatile ices gradually sublimated by the faint heat of passing stars. The fact that 3I Atlas still contains water ice, still shows activity, suggests either remarkable preservation or active maintenance. If this is artificial, we're looking at engineering designed to last longer than worlds, systems that have operated since before multicellular life emerged on Earth, technologies that have survived the birth and death of entire stellar generations. The preservation puzzle deepens when you consider the hazards of interstellar space. 3I Atlas would have passed through multiple supernova shock fronts over 7 billion years. It would have encountered intense radiation fields near massive stars. Collisions with interstellar dust grains at relativistic speeds would have sandblasted any exposed surfaces. Yet here it arrives structurally intact, functionally active, as if protected by something more than mere chance. One hypothesis suggests 3I Atlas might have spent most of its journey in a dormant state, its system shut down to conserve power and minimize degradation. Only as it approached our solar system would it have begun to reactivate, its ancient machinery stirring to life after eons of silence. This would explain why it showed unusual activity while still beyond Jupiter's orbit. It wasn't responding to solar heating. It was waking up. The implications for astrobiology are profound. If 3I Atlas is natural, it might carry organic molecules from another star system, possibly even preserved microorganisms in its icy matrix. Several scientists have noted that objects like this could be vectors for panspermia, spreading life between stellar systems. But if it's artificial, we're looking at evidence that intelligence emerged in our galaxy billions of years before Earth formed. Civilizations that were ancient before our planet was born. The Milky Way, 7 billion years ago, was a different galaxy than we see today. Star formation rates were higher. Supernovae were more frequent. The metallicity, what astronomers call the abundance of elements heavier than hydrogen and helium, was lower. Any civilization existing then would have faced different challenges and opportunities than we do. They might have developed technologies adapted to that harsher, more energetic environment. Technologies that to us would seem impossibly robust. Consider the navigational challenge alone. Over 7 billion years, the galaxy has rotated more than 25 times. Stars have moved, been born, died. The cosmic landscape 3. I Atlas departed from no longer exists. Yet it arrived here at our solar system with timing precise enough to encounter multiple planets. Random chance seems increasingly unlikely. This journey appears planned, its trajectory calculated to intercept our system at exactly this moment in cosmic history. The thick disk origin raises fascinating questions about the object's creators. If it has creators, stars in the thick disk tend to be older, metal-poor, and on more elliptical orbits around the galactic center. Any planets forming around these stars would have had different chemical compositions than Earth. Life emerging in such environments might follow completely different biochemical pathways, silicon-based rather than carbon-based, metabolisms powered by radiation rather than chemical energy, forms of intelligence we might not even recognize as life. 3I Atlas's retrograde orbit provides another clue to its ancient origins. In the early galaxy, stellar encounters were more common. Gravitational interactions could easily flip an object's orbital direction. What seems anomalous to us, a retrograde trajectory aligned with our ecliptic, might have been deliberately chosen billions of years ago based on calculations of where our solar system would be today. The builders, if they existed, would have needed to predict stellar motions across cosmic time with extraordinary precision. The water ice detection becomes even more intriguing in this context. Water formed early in the universe's history, but the specific isotopic signatures in 3I Atlas's emissions don't match solar system water. the deuterium to hydrogen ratio, the oxygen isotope proportions. They're all slightly off. This water formed around a different star under different conditions. It's alien water, carrying the chemical fingerprint of its birthplace across 7 billion years of space and time. Recent computer modeling suggests 3I Atlas might have made close passes to hundreds of star systems during its journey. Each encounter would have slightly altered its trajectory, a cosmic pinball game played out over billions of years. If this object is collecting data, it might carry within it a record of countless alien worlds, measurements of planets we'll never see, observations of civilizations that rose and fell before Earth existed. 3I Atlas could be a library, an archive of galactic history encoded in ways we haven't yet learned to read. Chapter 5. The Mars Revelation. October 3rd, 2025 will be remembered as the day everything changed, or the day we almost learned the truth but had it hidden from us. As 3I Atlas passed within 29 million kilometers of Mars, humanity had positioned 7 different spacecraft to observe this historic encounter. What they saw, or more precisely what they're not showing us, has ignited a firestorm of speculation that no amount of official silence can contain. The European Space Agency released exactly one image from their ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter 1, after a week of observations with multiple instruments. The image shows what they describe as a fuzzy white dot against the darkness of space. But independent analysis of this single frame reveals details ESA hasn't acknowledged. Enhancement techniques show the dot isn't circular, it's elongated, structured with what appears to be a central mass and extending features that don't match any comet morphology in our databases. NASA's situation is even more peculiar. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter carries the HiRISE camera, the most powerful full telescope we've ever sent to another planet. It should have captured 3I Atlas at 30 kilometers per pixel resolution, enough to reveal surface features, structural details, potentially even evidence of artificial construction. Those images exist. They were successfully transmitted to Earth, but they remain locked behind the government shutdown, unavailable to the public or even to most scientists. What we do have comes from an unexpected source: raw images from the Perseverance rover, still being automatically uploaded despite the shutdown, show something extraordinary. Simeon Schmaus, the astrophotographer who first identified 3I Atlas in these images, has now processed hundreds of frames. The object appears in 12 different image sets, each showing slight positional changes consistent with its calculated trajectory. But the shape remains wrong, too long, too straight, too symmetrical for a natural object. The amateur astronomy community has rallied to fill the information void. Using publicly available orbital data, they've calculated exactly where each Mars mission's instruments were pointing during the flyby. The Chinese Tianwen-1 orbiter was perfectly positioned. The UAE's Hope probe had an ideal angle. Even India's Mars orbiter mission, still functioning years past its planned lifetime, could have captured valuable data. Yet none of these agencies have released any images or statements about 3I Atlas. The silence is coordinated, deliberate, and deafening. Meanwhile, leaked information has begun surfacing on encrypted messaging platforms and anonymous image boards. A user claiming to be a contractor at JPL posted what they allege are unprocessed HiRISE images, before their account was deleted within hours. The images, if genuine, show an object that defies conventional explanation. It appears to have distinct sections, possibly separate modules connected by a central framework. There are what look like symmetrical protrusions that could be solar panels, radiators, or sensor arrays. The image quality is too poor to be certain, but the implications are staggering. The spectroscopic data that has been released raises more questions than it answers. Mars Express detected unusual absorption lines that don't match typical cometary emissions. The Nomad spectrometer on ExoMars found traces of complex organic molecules, but not the simple chains you'd expect from primordial ice. Instead, there are signatures suggesting processed materials, possibly even polymers. The teams analyzing this data have been remarkably circumspect in their interpretations, using careful language that avoids definitive conclusions. Here's what makes the Mars encounter particularly significant. 3I Atlas approached the red planet on a trajectory that seemed deliberately calculated for maximum observational opportunity. It passed through the orbital planes of multiple spacecraft, remaining visible to various instruments for days. If you wanted to be seen, to be studied, this is exactly how you'd approach. Yet, if you wanted to reveal yourself gradually, controlling the flow of information, you'd ensure that the most detailed observations happened when the primary space agencies were conveniently unable to communicate the behavioral anomalies. During the Mars approach had another layer to the mystery. 3I Atlas showed what appeared to be course corrections, tiny adjustments to its trajectory that kept it centered in the observation windows of multiple spacecraft. These changes were subtle, barely detectable, but they're there in the tracking data. Natural comets don't make course corrections. They follow ballistic trajectories modified only by gravitational forces and outgassing thrust. 3I Atlas did something else. Private aerospace companies have been notably absent from the discussion. SpaceX, Blue Origin, and others with deep space tracking capabilities have maintained complete radio silence about 3I Atlas. Industry insiders suggest there have been closed-door meetings, non-disclosure agreements, and possible coordination with government agencies. The commercial space sector seems to know something the public doesn't, and they're not talking. Social media has exploded with theories about what the Mars missions really saw. The hashtag 3I Atlas Truth has trended globally for 3 days straight. Amateur investigators have noticed suspicious activity at deep space communication facilities, unusual aircraft movements around aerospace contractors, and emergency sessions of space agency advisory boards. The pattern suggests a coordinated response to information deemed too sensitive for immediate public release. The strangest report comes from an amateur radio operator in Australia, who claims to have detected encoded transmissions from the direction of Mars during the flyby. The signals used a frequency allocation reserved for deep space missions, but didn't match any known spacecraft protocols. The operator recorded several minutes before the transmission abruptly ceased. Analysis of the recording shows structured data packets with mathematical regularities, suggesting artificial origin, but without decryption keys or context. The content remains a mystery. Chapter 6. The Chemical Enigma. The water pouring from 3I Atlas shouldn't exist. Not at that distance from the sun. Not at that rate. Not with those specific molecular signatures. 40 kilograms per second streaming into space like a fire hose at full pressure, while the object cruises through regions where water ice should be as inert as stone. The Swift Observatory's detection of hydroxyl radicals has given us our first chemical fingerprint of this visitor, and what it reveals challenges everything we thought we knew about cometary physics. When water molecules break apart in space, they create hydroxyl radicals that glow in ultraviolet light. It's a process we've observed in countless comets, but never like this. 3I Atlas was producing these signatures while nearly 3 astronomical units from the sun, in the frozen depths where even carbon dioxide struggles to sublime. The energy required to drive this water production has to come from somewhere, and solar radiation alone can't account for it. The isotope ratios tell an even stranger story. The deuterium to hydrogen ratio in 3I Atlas's water doesn't match any reservoir in our solar system. Not Earth's oceans, not Jupiter's moons, not the water ice in other comets. This is alien water, formed around a different star under different conditions billions of years ago. But here's the truly puzzling part. The ratios are too perfect. too consistent, as if the water has been processed, purified, standardized in ways nature rarely achieves. Zexi Xing's team at Auburn University has proposed that the water might be coming from floating ice grains in the coma, rather than the nucleus itself. These grains, somehow liberated from the main body, would sublime more efficiently due to their high surface area. But this explanation raises its own questions. How did the grains separate from the nucleus? Why don't we see similar behavior in other comets at these distances? And why do the grains appear to be uniformly sized, as if manufactured rather than randomly broken apart? The nickel mystery deepens with each observation. Spectroscopic analysis shows strong nickel emissions without the accompanying iron you'd expect from natural differentiation. The nickel-to-iron ratio is off by orders of magnitude. Some researchers have quietly noted that this signature resembles certain industrial alloys more than primordial solar system materials. Nickel alloys designed for extreme environments. Alloys that could survive billions of years in space without corroding. Carbon dioxide detection by Sphere X added another piece to the puzzle. The CO2 emissions show unusual isotopic enrichment in carbon-13, a heavier variant that's relatively rare in our solar system. This enrichment pattern could result from biological processing, industrial refinement, or formation in a stellar environment with different nuclear synthetic history. Each possibility carries profound implications for the nature of 3I Atlas. Think about the chemistry required to sustain water production at these rates for weeks or months if the hydroxyl emissions are real. And multiple independent observations confirm they are. Then, 3I Atlas must contain either vast reservoirs of easily sublimated ice or an internal heat source driving the process. The nuclear reactor hypothesis suddenly seems less fantastic when you consider the energy budget required. The organic molecules, detected but not fully characterized, present another enigma. The teams analyzing the data have been remarkably coy about specifics, mentioning only complex chains and unexpected structures. Leak spectra suggest the presence of amino acids, but not the simple ones like glycine that we found in other comets. These appear to be more complex, possibly even showing chirality, the molecular handedness that's a hallmark of biological processes. Gas phase chromatography data from one of the Mars orbiters, briefly visible on a public server before being removed, showed peaks consistent with long-chain hydrocarbons, not the random mixture you'd expect from primordial ice, but specific compounds with regular spacing in their mass spectrum, almost as if someone had been performing chemistry, creating particular molecules for particular purposes. The dust composition adds yet another layer of mystery. Unlike typical comets that release silicate dust similar to asteroids, 3I Atlas's dust shows unusual spectral features. There are absorption bands that don't match known minerals, emission lines that suggest exotic materials. Some researchers have privately speculated about manufactured particles, engineered at the nanoscale for properties we don't yet understand. Temperature measurements from infrared observations don't match models either. 3I Atlas appears warmer than it should be at its current distance from the Sun. Not dramatically so, but enough to suggest internal heat generation. The temperature distribution across the object isn't uniform either. There are hotspots that persist across multiple observations, maintaining their positions relative to the object's rotation. Natural comets don't have permanent hotspots. Machines with power sources do. The chemical evolution as 3I Atlas approaches the Sun will be telling. Natural comets show predictable changes in their emissions as different ices reach sublimation temperatures. Water, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane. Each becomes active at specific distances from the Sun. If 3I Atlas follows this pattern, it strengthens the natural hypothesis. But if it continues its anomalous behavior, if the chemistry remains inconsistent with thermal models, then we're looking at something else entirely. Laboratory attempts to recreate 3I Atlas's spectral signatures have failed repeatedly. No combination of known ices and minerals produces the exact emission patterns we're seeing. Researchers have tried exotic mixtures, primordial compositions, even simulated interstellar processing. Nothing matches perfectly. It's as if 3I Atlas is made of materials that don't exist in our solar system, or at least not in the combinations we're observing. Chapter 7. The Trajectory Prophecy. The path 3I Atlas has taken through our solar system reads less like random chance and more like a carefully orchestrated flight plan. Every calculation, every probability assessment, every statistical analysis points to the same uncomfortable conclusion. This trajectory is too perfect, too precisely aligned with planetary positions, too optimized for gravitational assists to be natural. We're looking at odds that make winning the lottery seem likely by comparison. To begin with the approach vector. 3I Atlas entered our solar system on a retrograde orbit, inclined at 175 degrees, essentially flying upside down and backward relative to our planets. This should have made planetary encounters less likely, not more. That its path has been threaded through our solar system like a needle through cosmic cloth, passing close to Mars, approaching Venus, heading for Jupiter, all while maintaining an alignment with Earth's orbital plane that has a probability of 0.2%. Richard Clow's calculations revealed something even more disturbing: the timing of 3I Atlantis' arrival, synchronized with planetary positions in a way that defies statistical explanation. Mars was perfectly placed for the October 3rd flyby. Earth will be ideally positioned for the December encounter. Jupiter awaits its turn in March. The combined probability of these alignments occurring naturally is 0.0005%. That's 5 in a million. You're more likely to flip a coin and get heads 17 times in a row. Now factor in the lack of non-gravitational acceleration. Despite massive outgassing, despite losing 40 kilograms of water per second, 3I Atlas hasn't deviated from its calculated path by even 0.028 arcseconds. This indicates a mass so enormous that the rocket effect of sublimating gases can't budge it, or active station keeping that corrects for any deviation. Either explanation challenges our understanding of what we're observing. The ecliptic alignment becomes even more suspicious when you consider galactic geometry. Earth's orbital plane sits at a 60-degree angle to the galactic disk, where most interstellar objects should originate. For 3I Atlas to arrive aligned within 5 degrees of our ecliptic after traveling for potentially billions of years requires either extraordinary luck or deliberate navigation. Loeb calculated that objects from the galactic disk should arrive from random directions. 3I Atlas didn't. Consider the retrograde advantage for a moment. A spacecraft entering our solar system retrograde gains several tactical benefits. Encounters with planets happen at higher relative velocities, making interception more difficult. The opposing motion allows for easier deployment of probes that need to shed velocity to enter planetary orbits. The approach angle provides better observation. Geometry for studying multiple planets in sequence is exactly how you'd plan a reconnaissance mission if you wanted to survey an entire system efficiently. The perihelion distance of 1.36 astronomical units places 3I Atlas at the perfect position for a solar Oberth maneuver. Too close, and solar radiation might damage sensitive equipment. Too far, and the gravitational assist becomes less effective. This precise distance allows maximum velocity change with minimum thermal stress, ideal for either escaping the solar system or deploying objects into the inner system. The optimization is too perfect to ignore. Trajectory analysis reveals micro-corrections that shouldn't exist, tiny changes in velocity and direction that occurred at specific points along the path. These adjustments, barely detectable in the tracking data, kept 3I Atlas centered in observation windows and aligned with upcoming planetary encounters. Natural forces can't explain these corrections. Outgassing is too random. Gravitational perturbations are too well understood. Something else is happening. The future path holds even more intrigue. After emerging from solar conjunction in November, 3I Atlas will pass through a region of space that offers gravitational leverage points for reaching Earth, Venus, or Mercury. The November 21st to December 5th window that Loeb identified isn't arbitrary. It's when the object's position relative to Earth creates optimal transfer orbits for any deployed probes. A few meters per second of delta V at the right moment could send a mini probe on a direct intercept course with Earth. Backward trajectory analysis reveals another anomaly. The path 3I Atlas took to reach our solar system appears to have included close passes to at least 3 other star systems over the past million years. Each encounter would have provided gravity assists that adjusted its course. The cumulative effect of these encounters should have randomized its approach angle to our solar system. Instead, it arrived with surgical precision. This suggests either incredible coincidence or active navigation during the interstellar journey. The Jupiter encounter in March 2026 presents the most intriguing possibility. At its closest approach, 3I Atlas will pass within range of the Juno spacecraft's instruments. But more importantly, Jupiter's massive gravity well could dramatically alter the object's trajectory, depending on the exact approach geometry. 3I/Atlas could gain enough velocity to escape the solar system entirely, or it could lose enough to become gravitationally bound to our Sun. The choice of which outcome occurs might not be left to chance. Orbital mechanists have run thousands of simulations trying to find natural explanations for 3I Atlas's path. They've modeled different origin points, various ages, multiple encounter scenarios. None produced the observed trajectory with reasonable probability. The best fit models require assuming 3I Atlas originated from a specific point in space, at a specific time with a specific velocity, as if launched rather than naturally ejected. Chapter 8. The Information War. Something unprecedented is happening in the normally transparent world of astronomical observation. Data about 3I Atlas is being controlled, filtered, and possibly suppressed in ways that suggest knowledge too sensitive for public consumption. The patterns are too consistent across multiple agencies, countries, and institutions to be coincidental. We're witnessing either the most remarkable series of technical failures and bureaucratic delays in space science history, or a coordinated effort to manage information about our interstellar visitor. The timeline of silence begins with China's Tianwen-1 mission. Despite being perfectly positioned to observe 3I Atlas during the Mars flyby, the China National Space Administration has released nothing. Not a single image, not a press release, not even an acknowledgement that observations were attempted. This from an agency that typically celebrates every achievement of their Mars program with extensive media coverage. The silence is deafening and completely out of. Russia's contribution to the ExoMars mission includes sophisticated spectrometers that should have gathered detailed compositional data. The Russian Academy of Sciences, normally eager to share scientific discoveries that enhance their prestige, has published nothing. Individual researchers who are vocal about 3I Atlas in July and August have gone quiet. Their social media accounts dormant. Their research pages haven't been updated. It's as if the entire Russian space science community has collectively decided this particular interstellar object isn't worth discussing. The Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, has monitoring equipment on the International Space Station that could track 3I Atlas. They've said nothing. The Indian Space Research Organization, which still has a functioning orbiter around Mars, maintains complete silence. Even the European Southern Observatory, with its powerful ground-based telescopes in Chile, has been unusually reticent about follow-up observations. The pattern extends across every major spacefaring nation and significant astronomical institution. Private communications between researchers paint a disturbing picture. Encrypted messages leaked to WikiLeaks suggest that preliminary findings about 3I Atlas were so anomalous that multiple space agencies agreed to a voluntary embargo until further analysis could be completed. The key phrase that appears repeatedly is pending verification of extraordinary claims. The Sagan Standard. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, is being invoked to justify unprecedented information control. Academic preprint servers tell their own story. Since October 3rd, not a single paper about 3I Atlas has appeared on Arxiv, the primary repository for astronomical research. This, despite dozens of teams conducting observations. Statistical analysis shows this silence is essentially impossible. Under normal circumstances for comparison, the previous interstellar object, Borisov, generated over 30 preprints in its first month of observation. 3I Atlas has produced 0 in the week following the Mars encounter. Freedom of Information Act requests filed with NASA have been met with unusual responses. Instead of the typical denial or partial release, the agency has invoked rarely used national security exemptions. The claim that observations of a comet could impact national security has raised eyebrows and lawsuits. The Electronic Frontier Foundation has filed emergency motions demanding transparency, arguing that the public has a right to know about potential extraterrestrial contact. Meanwhile, the disinformation campaign has intensified. Social media platforms have begun flagging posts about 3I Atlas as potential misinformation, even when they simply quote published scientific papers. Search engines have adjusted their algorithms to deprioritize 3I Atlas content, pushing official NASA pages that haven't been updated since before the Mars encounter. The digital landscape is being shaped to minimize public awareness and discussion of our interstellar visitor. The amateur astronomy community has become the primary source of real information, but they're facing unprecedented challenges. Several prominent amateur astronomers have reported equipment failures at critical moments. Telescopes that were tracking 3I Atlas have mysteriously lost alignment. Computer systems have crashed, destroying hours of observation data. While equipment failures happen, the clustering around 3I Atlas observations is statistically improbable. Government involvement extends beyond space agencies. The U.S. Space Force has activated tracking asset normally reserved for monitoring adversarial satellites. The National Reconnaissance Office has reportedly retasked imaging satellites to observe 3I Atlas. The involvement of military and intelligence assets in studying what's supposedly a natural comet raises obvious questions about what they know that we don't. International cooperation has taken strange forms. The UN Office for Outer Space Affairs convened an emergency session that was closed to press and public. Attendees were required to surrender electronic devices and sign unprecedented non-disclosure agreements. The few leaked details suggest discussion of protocols for potential contact scenarios and coordination of public messaging. Why would a natural comet require UN involvement in information management? Financial markets have begun showing unusual patterns that correlate with 3I Atlas's approach. Aerospace and defense contractors have seen unexplained stock movements. Companies specializing in deep space communication equipment have received large, unattributed orders. The derivatives market shows betting patterns consistent with insider knowledge of a significant announcement expected in November. Someone with deep pockets is positioning for a revelation. The most disturbing evidence comes from whistleblowers within the space agencies themselves. Anonymous sources describe heated internal debates about public disclosure. Some argue for full transparency. Others insist the public isn't ready for what 3I Atlas might represent. The compromise position appears to be gradual revelation, releasing information in controlled doses to prevent panic while preparing for potential confirmation of non-natural origin. Chapter 9. Tomorrow's Revelation. In less than 24 hours, 3I Atlas will reach perihelion, its closest approach to our Sun. What happens in that moment? Hidden from Earth's direct observation by solar glare, will determine whether we're dealing with a remarkable but natural comet, or something that fundamentally changes our understanding of our place in the universe. The stage is set for either vindication of conventional astronomy or validation of the impossible. Every comet that has ever approached our sun this closely has shown dramatic changes. The thermal stress of solar radiation causes violent outgassing. Ice sublimates explosively. Dust fountains erupt from the nucleus. Sometimes the entire structure fragments, unable to withstand the competing forces of gravity and vapor pressure. Schumacher Levy 9 gave us a preview when it broke into 21 pieces before impacting Jupiter. Comet Ison disintegrated entirely during its solar passage. The sun is a comet killer. And tomorrow, 3I Atlas faces its trial by fire. But what if it doesn't break apart? What if, as Loeb suggests with his 40% probability, 3I Atlas maintains its structural integrity because it was designed to. The engineering required to survive such an encounter intact would be extraordinary. Hull materials able to withstand temperature differentials of hundreds of degrees. Structural frameworks that could handle thermal expansion without fracturing. Systems that could continue operating while bombarded by solar radiation that would fry unprotected electronics in seconds. The JUICE spacecraft will be watching from its unique vantage point. Its instruments trained on 3I Atlas as it swings around the sun. The European probe's position is perfect for observing any fragmentation, any release of smaller objects, any behavior that deviates from cometary norms. The data it collects tomorrow will either confirm 3I Atlas as an unusual but natural comet, or open a door we can never close again. Ground-based observatories have prepared for this moment with unprecedented coordination. The Very Large Telescope in Chile, the Keck Observatory in Hawaii, the Gran Telescopio Canarias in Spain, all have scheduled observation blocks for the moment 3I Atlas emerges from solar conjunction. Radio telescopes worldwide will be listening for any transmissions, any signals that might coincide with perihelion passage. If 3I Atlas is going to reveal its true nature, tomorrow is when it happens. The deployment scenario that Loeb describes sounds like science fiction, but the physics are sound. At perihelion, 3I Atlas will be moving at 68 kilometers per second relative to the Sun by releasing probes with specific velocity vectors. Opposing this motion, they could shed enough speed to enter elliptical orbits around the Sun. These orbits could be calculated to intercept planetary targets months or years later. It's exactly how we plan multi-target missions, just executed from an interstellar platform. The self-replication possibility transforms tomorrow from an astronomical event into a potential turning point for human civilization. If 3I Atlas releases even a single probe capable of reproducing itself using asteroid materials, our solar system could be colonized by alien technology within our lifetimes. Each generation of probes would be smaller, more numerous, harder to detect. Within decades, they could be everywhere, watching, recording, possibly preparing for something we can't anticipate. Consider the strategic timing of perihelion occurring during solar conjunction. Earth-based telescopes can't observe directly due to solar glare. Communications with Mars missions are degraded by solar interference. It's the perfect moment for covert operations, whether deploying probes or executing maneuvers that might otherwise be detected. If you are planning to do something you didn't want observed, this is exactly when you do it. The temperature 3I Atlas will experience at perihelion exceeds 400 Kelvin, hot enough to boil water, melt certain metals, and trigger chemical reactions in any complex materials present. For a natural comet, this heat drives spectacular activity. For an artificial object, it might activate systems that have been dormant during the cold interstellar journey. Tomorrow's heating could be a wake-up call, bringing ancient machinery back to life. Spectroscopic observations during perihelion will be crucial for detecting any unusual emissions if 3i Atlas is artificial. The thermal stress might cause it to vent coolants, exhaust products, or other industrial chemicals that would never appear in natural comets. Several teams have prepared specialized filters to detect specific wavelengths associated with processed materials, synthetic compounds, even potential communication lasers. The nuclear reactor hypothesis faces its ultimate test tomorrow. If 3i Atlas contains a fission or fusion power source, the thermal cycling of perihelion could trigger observable changes in its emissions. Neutron detectors on various spacecraft have been activated, ready to detect any nuclear signatures. While the inverse square law means detection at these distances is challenging, a sufficiently powerful reactor might produce detectable signatures. The financial markets are already pricing in tomorrow's uncertainty. Options volatility has spiked to levels not seen since the pandemic. Aerospace stocks are swinging wildly on rumors and speculation. The VIX, Wall Street's fear gauge, shows traders expect significant market movement following perihelion. Whether from actual knowledge or simple nervousness, money is betting that tomorrow brings revelation. Military preparations have intensified in ways that suggest contingency planning for unprecedented scenarios. Sky watchers have noted unusual activity at missile defense installations. Space Force assets have been repositioned. NATO's Space Center has gone to heightened readiness, while officials claim these are routine exercises. The timing correlation with 3i Atlas's perihelion is hard to ignore. Chapter 10. The November Window. After tomorrow's perihelion, 3i Atlas will disappear behind the sun from Earth's perspective, entering a blind spot that will last until early November for 2 weeks. We will be unable to observe directly what might be the most significant event in our species' history. When it emerges, when our telescopes can once again track our interstellar visitor, we'll know. Either it will be fragmenting like any natural comet stressed by solar heating, or it will be intact, possibly accompanied by a fleet of deployed probes, confirming our deepest fears and greatest hopes simultaneously. The November window that Loeb identified, November 21st through December 5th, represents more than just favorable observation conditions. It's when the orbital mechanics align for potential Earth intercept trajectories. Any probes released at perihelion would need approximately 3 weeks to position themselves for Earth approach. The timing is too perfect to be coincidental if 3i Atlas was designed for this mission. Its creators calculated these windows with extraordinary precision billions of years ago. JUICE will provide our first post-perihelion observations, its instruments capturing 3i Atlas as it begins its outbound journey. The European spacecraft's position offers a unique perspective, able to detect any structural changes, any accompanying objects, any behavioral anomalies that occurred during solar passage. The data downlink from JUICE will take time, but when it arrives, it will contain answers to questions humanity has asked since we first looked at the stars. Ground-based telescopes are already booking observation time for November, with some facilities completely dedicated to 3i Atlas monitoring. The Vera Rubin Observatory, with its ability to survey large sky areas rapidly, will search for any deployed probes. The Event Horizon Telescope Network, famous for imaging black holes, has been reconfigured to potentially resolve structural details of 3i Atlas itself. Every major astronomical asset on Earth is preparing for November's revelations. The radio astronomy community has developed specific protocols for November observations if 3i Atlas transmitted the WOW signal in 1977. It might transmit again as it leaves our solar system. The Allen Telescope Array will maintain continuous monitoring. Breakthrough Listen has dedicated all available resources. Even amateur radio operators worldwide have coordinated observation schedules. If 3i Atlas speaks, we'll be listening. Chemical evolution during the November window will be particularly telling. Natural comets show predictable changes in their emissions as they recede from the sun. different ices become inactive in sequence as temperatures drop. If 3I Atlas follows this pattern, it supports the natural hypothesis. But if emissions remain anomalous, if water production continues at impossible distances, if unusual chemicals appear in the spectrum, then we're observing something else entirely. The probe detection challenge is daunting. Objects released from 3I Atlas could be small, perhaps meter-sized or less, at astronomical distances. These would be essentially invisible to optical telescopes, but they might emit heat signatures detectable in infrared. They might reflect radar. They might even transmit signals. The search strategy involves multiple detection methods, casting the widest possible net for objects that might already be heading our way. Public preparation for November's potential revelations has begun subtly. Government agencies have updated continuity of operations plans. Emergency broadcast systems have been tested with unusual frequency. Psychological support resources have been quietly enhanced. While officials maintain these are routine preparations, the timing suggests contingency planning for announcement scenarios that could trigger social disruption. The Vatican Observatory, one of the oldest astronomical institutions, has scheduled a conference on theological implications of extraterrestrial life for late November. The timing, they claim, is coincidental. But the guest list includes not just theologians, but also astrobiologists, SETI researchers, and notably several scientists involved in 3I Atlas observations. The Catholic Church appears to be preparing for potential confirmation of non-terrestrial intelligence. International cooperation frameworks activated for 3I Atlas continue expanding. The Committee on Space Research has established working groups for various first contact scenarios. The International Astronomical Union has prepared naming conventions for any artificial structures or deployed probes discovered. Legal scholars are drafting frameworks for potential communication protocols. The infrastructure for first contact is being built in real time. Stock market algorithms have identified patterns suggesting major institutional investors are positioning for November announcements. Derivatives markets show unusual activity in aerospace, defense, and, surprisingly, rare earth mining companies. The smart money appears to be betting on technological revelations that could reshape entire industries, whether from insider knowledge or sophisticated analysis. Capital is flowing toward companies positioned to benefit from potential alien technology disclosure. The psychological impact of the November window extends beyond official preparations. Mental health professionals report increased anxiety among patients aware of 3I Atlas. Online support groups have formed for people struggling with existential implications. Some religious communities have held special services. The mere possibility that November might bring confirmation of alien intelligence is already affecting human consciousness globally. Scientific papers embargoed until November have been accumulating in journal review systems. Editors report unprecedented numbers of submissions related to 3I Atlas, many marked for simultaneous release. After a certain observational milestone, the scientific community appears to be preparing for coordinated disclosure, with multiple independent teams ready to confirm or refute extraordinary claims. Chapter 11. The Cosmic Implications. Whether 3I Atlas proves natural or artificial, its mere existence forces us to confront realities about our universe that we've been reluctant to acknowledge. The discovery of a third interstellar object in just 8 years means the galaxy is filled with wanderers, countless objects drifting between stars, each one potentially carrying information, materials, or perhaps even intelligence from distant stellar systems. We're not isolated. We never were. The cosmic ocean is full of messages in bottles, and 3I Atlas might be the first one we've learned to read. The size anomaly alone revolutionizes our understanding of interstellar populations. Finding an object as massive as 3I Atlas, as only our third interstellar visitor suggests the galaxy contains far more large bodies than our models predicted. These aren't just tiny fragments ejected from planetary formation. They're substantial objects, possibly entire worlds set adrift by stellar encounters or deliberate launches. The implications for panspermia, the spread of life between stellar systems, are staggering. If 3I Atlas is natural, it tells us that interstellar space preserves complex chemistry for billions of years. The water, organic molecules, and unusual isotope ratios we've detected mean that materials from one stellar system can survive the journey to another essentially intact. Life's building blocks could be streaming between stars continuously, seeding nascent planetary systems with complex molecules that jumpstart biochemistry. Earth itself might have been fertilized by similar ancient visitors, but if it's artificial, if that 40% probability Lobo signs proves correct, then we're facing a reality that dwarfs any scientific discovery in human history. It would mean intelligence arose in our galaxy billions of years before Earth formed. Civilizations that were ancient before our sun was born. Technologies that have operated longer than our planet has existed. We wouldn't just be not alone. We'd be newcomers to a galaxy that's been inhabited for most of cosmic time. The retrograde orbit takes on new meaning in this context. A natural explanation requires extraordinary coincidences. An artificial explanation makes it strategic. Retrograde approaches allow reconnaissance of multiple planets with minimal energy expenditure. They provide ideal deployment geometries for probe networks. They make interception by primitive civilizations nearly impossible with chemical rockets. If 3I Atlas was designed, its trajectory reveals sophisticated understanding of orbital mechanics and possibly knowledge of our solar system's configuration, obtained through previous reconnaissance. Consider the implications of the WOW signal connection. If 3I Atlas transmitted that signal in 1977, it means the object has been monitoring Earth for at least 48 years. It knew we had radio telescopes. It knew what frequencies we monitored. It possibly even knew about the hydrogen line's significance to SETI searches. This isn't random contact. It's targeted communication from an intelligence that understands us better than we might be comfortable acknowledging. The self-replication scenario forces us to confront possibilities that science fiction has explored, but science has avoided. If 3I Atlas can deploy probes that harvest asteroid materials to build copies of themselves, we're looking at technology that could colonize entire stellar systems without biological crews. The galaxy might be full of such autonomous explorers, patient and persistent, spreading through space like a slow-motion explosion of intelligence. Earth might have been under observation by such probes for millions of years without our knowledge. The 7 billion year age transforms our perspective on galactic evolution. When 3I Atlas began its journey, the universe was experiencing its peak era of star formation. Supernovae were more common, gamma-ray bursts more frequent. Any civilization existing then faced challenges we can barely imagine. Yet they built something that survived, that functions, that navigates. The robustness required suggests engineering principles we haven't discovered, material science we haven't achieved, possibly physics we don't yet understand. Our response to 3I Atlas reveals as much about humanity as the object reveals about the cosmos. The information control, the institutional panic, the market volatility, all demonstrate that we intuitively understand the stakes. This isn't just about scientific discovery. It's about humanity's cosmic status. Are we unique, special, the only intelligence in a vast, empty universe? Or are we one among many, possibly monitored, potentially judged, certainly no longer able to, and we're alone? The philosophical implications extend into every domain of human thought. Religion must grapple with scriptures written assuming Earth's uniqueness. Science must reconcile with the possibility that we're observing technology beyond our understanding. Governments must consider sovereignty in a universe where Earth might be under surveillance by intellects vast. cool, and unsympathetic. Every assumption about humanity's special status crumbles if 3i Atlas proves artificial. Even the economic implications stagger comprehension. If 3i Atlas demonstrates technologies we could reverse engineer, entire industries become obsolete overnight. Fusion power, interstellar propulsion, materials that last billions of years. These would revolutionize human civilization, but they would also destabilize every existing power structure. Nations with space programs would gain unprecedented advantages. Companies that decode alien technologies would wield power exceeding governments. The scramble for 3i Atlas's secrets could trigger conflicts that make resource wars seem trivial. The evolutionary perspective offers its own revelations. If intelligence is common enough that ancient civilizations could send probes that reach us today, then the universe might be teeming with life at various stages of development. We're not special. We're typical. Our struggles, achievements, and destinies might be patterns repeated countless times across cosmic history. 3i Atlas forces us to see ourselves not as the pinnacle of evolution, but as one experiment among billions, noteworthy only in our own perception. Chapter 11. The Cosmic Implications. Whether 3i Atlas proves natural or artificial, its mere existence forces us to confront realities about our universe that we've been reluctant to acknowledge. The discovery of a third interstellar object in just 8 years means the galaxy is filled with wanderers, countless objects drifting between stars, each one potentially carrying information, materials, or perhaps even intelligence from distant stellar systems. We're not isolated. We never were. The cosmic ocean is full of messages in bottles, and 3i Atlas might be the first one we've learned to read. The size anomaly alone revolutionizes our understanding of interstellar populations. Finding an object as massive as 3i Atlas, as only our third interstellar visitor, suggests the galaxy contains far more large bodies than our models predicted. These aren't just tiny fragments ejected from planetary formation. They're substantial objects, possibly entire worlds set adrift by stellar encounters or deliberate launches. The implications for panspermia, the spread of life between stellar systems, are staggering. If 3i Atlas is natural, it tells us that interstellar space preserves complex chemistry for billions of years. The water, organic molecules, and unusual isotope ratios we've detected mean that materials from one stellar system can survive the journey to another, essentially intact. Life's building blocks could be streaming between stars continuously, seeding nascent planetary systems with complex molecules that jumpstart biochemistry. Earth itself might have been fertilized by similar ancient visitors, but if it's artificial, if that 40% probability Lobo signs proves correct, then we're facing a reality that dwarfs any scientific discovery in human history. It would mean intelligence arose in our galaxy billions of years before Earth formed. Civilizations that were ancient before our sun was born. Technologies that have operated longer than our planet has existed. We wouldn't just be not alone. We'd be newcomers to a galaxy that's been inhabited for most of cosmic time. The retrograde orbit takes on new meaning in this context. A natural explanation requires extraordinary coincidences. An artificial explanation makes it strategic. Retrograde approaches allow reconnaissance of multiple planets with minimal energy expenditure. They provide ideal deployment geometries for probe networks. They make interception by primitive civilizations nearly impossible with chemical rockets. If 3i Atlas was designed, its trajectory reveals sophisticated understanding of orbital mechanics and possibly knowledge of our solar system's configuration obtained through previous reconnaissance. Consider the implications of the WOW signal connection. If 3i Atlas transmitted that signal in 1977, it means the object has been monitoring Earth for at least 48 years. It knew we had radio telescopes, It knew what frequencies we monitored. It possibly even knew about the hydrogen line's significance to SETI searches. This isn't random contact. It's targeted communication from an intelligence that understands us better than we might be comfortable acknowledging. The self-replication scenario forces us to confront possibilities that science fiction has explored, but science has avoided. If 3i Atlas can deploy probes that harvest asteroid materials to build copies of themselves, we're looking at technology that could colonize entire stellar systems without biological crews. The galaxy might be full of such autonomous explorers, patient and persistent, spreading through space like a slow-motion explosion of intelligence. Earth might have been under observation by such probes for millions of years without our knowledge. The 7-billion-year age transforms our perspective on galactic evolution. When 3i Atlas began its journey, the universe was experiencing its peak era of star formation. Supernovae were more common, gamma-ray bursts more frequent. Any civilization existing then faced challenges we can barely imagine, yet they built something that survived.